Good afternoon, colleagues, senatorial and central staff testifiers, and our listening and viewing audience. The Committee on Government Operations, Veteran Affairs, and Consumer Protection meeting for Tuesday, September 26, 2023 is hereby called to order. As we gather for today's meeting, and before we proceed to roll call, I would like to take this opportunity to commend the VI Department of Justice and the Family Resource Center for working together to host this year's observance of the National Day of Remembrance for Murder Victims. This observance, which was held yesterday afternoon, began at the waterfront across from Vendors Plaza with family members calling out the names of murder victims while roses were laid in the waters. A formal ceremony was then held in the Emancipation Garden, and of special note is remarks provided by our Commissioner of Department of Police, Honorable Ray Martinez, where he is hoping that one day he would be able to say to legislators and others in our community that there are 0 murders, so we have 0 arrests. I made sure to carve out time from my hectic schedule to participate in this observance, as over the years, my family, loved ones, neighbors, students, and our people here in the Virgin Islands and throughout our nation have been hurt by senseless violence. I remember my nephew, Ezekiah Joseph, who was murdered on January 26, 2015, at the age of 21. My student, Denard Lawrence, murdered on September 3rd, 2015, at the age of 25. My cousin and student, Jabari Joseph, murdered on December 27th, 2017, at the age of 22. My student, Curtis Fredericks, murdered on May 18, 2019, at the age of 30. Just this year, 2 of my family members were murdered on the same day, February 20th, Jaquan George and Tashi Monsanto, both at a young age of 21. These are the few names of the murder victims. None of the murder victims were perfect human beings, and none of us here, or even those listening to my voice, are. However, we must practice self-discipline and talk to people who know and love and care about you to help give you the level of self-control not to harm others, and listen and take heed to their word. So my heart goes out to all those whose loved ones are victims of murder. Now on to more joyous news. Last week, September 19, the Federation of St. Christopher, St. Kitts, and Nevis celebrated its 40th year of independence from 1983 to 2023. Happy Independence Day to all the Kittitians and Nevisians. We salute our Caribbean neighbor under the leadership of Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Terrence Michael Drew, and their family and friends, celebrating under the theme, Growing Sustainably, Developing Maturely, Building Resiliency, Independence 40. So I really want to say a really happy Independence Day to former Senator, the Honorable Roosevelt St. Clair David, as well as my good friend, Callie Gibson, and my adopted mother, she's a Nevisian, Gertrude Keynes. They are from the Great Islands of St. Kitts and Nevis. Finally, this committee will host a town hall meeting for the St. Thomas taxi operators on Friday, September 29th, 2023. The Town Hall meeting is an opportunity for taxi cab men and women to share their concerns and ask questions about the taxi industry and the services the Taxi Cab Commission provides. Our taxi cab operators are one of the first to welcome our visitors. We must work together to deliver excellent experiences. I'm going to say that again and repeat it. Excellent experiences from our visitors to when they depart the Virgin Islands. We also need to address the operators' concern about the services they receive and how we can assist them in improving our overall tourism product. In the St. Thomas Town Hall meeting, actually, the St. Thomas Town Hall meeting is the second in a series of meetings to hear from taxi cab operators in the territory about their needs. The first was held in St. John on Friday, June 23rd, and the final Town Hall meeting will be held in St. Croix at another date. Again, to our taxi cab men and women, let your voice be heard this coming Friday, beginning at 6 p.m. at the Legislative Hall, the Earl B. Otley Legislative Hall in St. Thomas. All are welcome. Madam Clerk, kindly proceed to roll call.
Senator Samuel Carrion. Senator Carrion, present. Senator Ray Fonseca.
Present.
Senator Fonseca, present. Senator Francis Heiliger. Alma Francis Heiliger.
Present.
Senator Francis Heiliger, present. Senator Kenneth L. Gittins. Senator Gittins, absent. Senator Javon E. James Sr. Senator James Sr., absent. Senator Carla J. Joseph.
Present.
Senator Joseph, present. Senator Milton E. Potter.
Here.
Senator Potter, present. Madam Chair, you have 5 present and 2 absent.
Thank you so kindly, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, kindly recognize the presence of Majority Leader, Senator Kenneth L. Gittins.
Okay, Madam Chair, you have 6 present, 1 absent.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. We do have a quorum. Madam Chair, do we have any correspondences to be read into the record?
We do.
Kindly proceed, Madam Clerk.
A letter dated September 26, 2023, to the Honorable Carla J. Joseph, Chairwoman of the Government Operations, Veterans Affairs, and Consumer Protection. 35th Legislature of the Virgin Islands, 3022 Estate Golden Rock, St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. Dear Madam Chair, please excuse my tardiness for today's scheduled hearing for the Committee on Government Operations, Veterans Affairs, and Consumer Protection. I'll be there as soon as possible, and I apologize for any inconvenience this may cause. Thank you for your kind consideration in this matter. Respectfully, Javon E. James Sr., Senator, 35th Legislature of the Virgin Islands. Madam Chair, this ends the reading of the correspondence.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Kindly note that Senator Javon E. James is acknowledged that he will be tardy. It is acknowledged. Madam Clerk, kindly proceed with reading today's agenda into the record.
The Committee on Government Operations, Veterans Affairs, and Consumer Protection has scheduled a meeting for 1:30 p.m. on Tuesday, September 26, 2023, in the Fritz E. Lowitz Legislative Conference Room in St. Croix. The purpose of the meeting is to receive testimony and consider the following legislative measures. In Block 1, the committee will receive testimony concerning Bill Number 35-0102, an act honoring and commending Ralph A. Chabert, MD, for outstanding contributions in the medical field to the people of the Virgin Islands and his many civic contributions to the community, especially to the island of St. Croix, and to name the labor and delivery / postpartum unit maternity services at the Juan F. Louis Hospital and Medical Center North in his honor. This bill is sponsored by Senator Maurice C. James. The invited testifiers are Ms. Cora Christian, MD, Ms. Ivy Ashwood, RN, Ms. Vivian Epstein Flood, MS, RN, and Mr. Angelo K. Gallagher, MD. Madam Chair, this ends the reading of Block 1 of today's agenda.
Thank you kindly, Madam Clerk. At this time, I would like to recognize the chairperson of the Committee on Education and Workforce, the Honorable Maurice C. James, as well as the President of the 35th Legislature of the Virgin Islands, the Honorable Novell E. Francis, Jr. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. Madam Clerk, well, actually, who speaks on behalf of Bill number 35-0102?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I do.
Senator Maurice C. James, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to first start by saying that I am also joined in sponsorship of this bill to honor Dr. Ralph D. Chabert by the Majority Leader, Senator Kenneth Gittins, and Senator Novell Francis. I almost forgot your name, sir, sorry. So I'm joined by both of them in sponsoring this particular piece of legislation that I'm very happy and honored and privileged to sponsor. I know that the testifiers are going to speak about Dr. Chabert. I didn't know him except knowing him from a distance, really, as a doctor in the community. And as someone, of course, because my father was a doctor, knowing of their relationship. But he always appeared to me, whenever I saw him, as, you know, sometimes we have to realize in our community that young people see us as, now that I'm an elder too, right? And they look at us and they learn from us. And he always, to me, was a reserved, elegant, classy man. You know, every time I saw him move throughout the community. I know they're going to speak about him. He's definitely deserving of this honor. And I just want to say two quotes that I found because I think they reflect on who he is as a doctor. And it says, in order to be a good doctor, a man must have a good character. Whatever weaknesses and foibles he may have, he must overcome his fellow human beings in the concrete and deserve his their good before his own. I was writing it a little too fast. But basically it says really, and I know that it's true, a doctor has to put himself aside when he's treating patients. For the most part, they're good and their health comes before his own. Sometimes to his detriment, quite frankly, or her, I shouldn't, but in this case, since it's Dr. Chabert, I'll say his, right, the pronoun. But sometimes doctors put their own health aside to take care of others. Nurses do the same thing. They're so dedicated to serving others. And only a doctor is blessed with the magical powers to treat a life, to bring health into our lives, and to be there with us when we have lost all the hope. I want to add something too from my own experience. I remember when I told my father that I was going to go to law school, he said, that's good, that's good. It's better to be a lawyer than a doctor anyway. You know, it's an easier life. And I was like, I don't know about that. So when I came back home, And I was practicing. I went up to him one day and I said, no, it's actually better to be a doctor, because when a doctor comes into the room and tells you whatever he tells you about your diagnosis, you accept it. You actually sit there and you go, okay, doctor, thank you. When a lawyer tells you you have a problem or whatever it is and how to solve it, your client becomes a lawyer. They tell you, no, this and that, the law. So everybody's a lawyer, but everybody is not a doctor. So the doctor gets the deference, and simply because you're taking care of bodies and minds, and more than anything else, that's really most of us want. If we have a healthy body, we're able to live a good life. And so on behalf of a grateful community, I want to say to the family of Dr. Chabert, I know his daughter from the time she was small, come into my aunt's beauty shop. And I just want to say to you that, you know, your father is loved. I've heard people in the community talk highly about him when he treated them as a doctor. And he's done well. He's done well. And so thank you, Madam Chair. And if I didn't say before, good afternoon, Virgin Islands, and good afternoon, everyone. I just went right into it because I am honored to be offering this along with my colleagues. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Senator James. We have several testifiers here with us, a couple of testifiers here with us in the Legislative Conference Room. We also have a testifier joining us virtually. So I would like to invite the first testifier who was here early and on time, Ms. Ivy Ashford. But before you begin, Ms. Ashwood, let me assure that we get everyone who is online and just do a quality check. Do we have a testifier? I believe we should be having. Do we have any testifiers online? Okay.
Dr. Christian.
Dr. Christian. Okay, your mic is operating very well. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And welcome to the committee meeting. So we have Dr. Christian, we have Ms. Ashwood here present, we have Dr. Chabert, and we also have Ms. Vivian Ebsen Flood. Okay, what we're going to do is work in the order that we have it placed on our agenda. Dr. Christian, Ms. Ashwood, hold one moment. Dr. Christian, we're going to start with you, and then we will then move to Ms. Ashwood, and then Dr. Chabert, and then finally Ms. Ebsen Flood. Okay? Before you talk and in corresponding and having a dialogue, just a housekeeping matter, be sure to state your name before you speak, because this is proceeding is being recorded. Our stenographer is in the St. Thomas district. Thank God for technology. So, Dr. Christian, kindly proceed with reading your testimony into the record.
Okay. Good afternoon. This is Dr. Cora Christian. I am the Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Virgin Islands Medical Society, and I come to speak on their behalf. So good afternoon, Senator Carla Joseph, Chair of the Operations, Veteran Affairs, and Consumer Protection. Senator Javon James, the Vice Chair of Operations, Veteran Affairs, and Consumer Protection. Committee members, Senator Francis, Senator Fonseca, Senator Gittens, Senator Carrion, Senator Potter, Senator Heiliger, and the non-committee members, Senator Blyden, Senator Capehart, Senator Fred Gregory, Senator James, Senator Johnson, Senator Bocas, and Senator DeGraff. Invited testifiers and the viewing and listening audience. And point of personal privilege, since Senator Joseph started with announcing about the independence of St. Kitts and Nevis, one of the reasons I could not be present is because my husband, who was a former ambassador of St. Kitts, of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and he sends his greetings on both to Dr. Dishabert's family and also on the independence, the 40th anniversary of the independence. But because of his disability, I had to be here to be his caregiver. So now I begin my testimony. It is easy to sustain our concern for someone who is before our very eyes, but it is quite a different thing when that person is far away, even though in our hearts we have not forgotten them. This is an additional reason why we must congratulate Senator Gittens and Senator James for the resolution that details the wonderful journey of Dr. Ralph Dishabert. Dr. Dishabert's journey has been chronicled in the resolution today. Although it is worth being repeated, I thought it would be good to spend my time giving testimony about my personal relationship with this quiet, reserved, and powerful physician who made me understand that it is not the loud bark that is the most effective, but the one who quietly rules. In 1975, I made preparations to come home to work. I'd applied to the Virgin Islands Department of Health, which at that time controlled all healthcare, including both hospitals, except for, of course, physician private practices. I had received confirmation that my NOPA had been processed, but when I arrived in St. Croix, I was told that my position had been given to Dr. Donna Christian Green. It was an error. At that time, Dr. Dishabert was Assistant Commissioner and Medical Director of the Charles Howard Hospital. The only thing he knew about me was through his mom, for my mom and his mom were big Anglicans. My mom being the secretary of the All Saints Cathedral Church in St. Thomas, and his mom, Miss Annie, as she was called, and was as revered as any priest in St. Croix, worked together on separate islands on behalf of the Anglican Church. Miss Annie's only failure was that she was a woman, but had more authority than most priests. And despite that relationship, and my dad being born and raised in Frederiksted, I was seen as a St. Thomian. However, my spirit of never give up allowed me to assign myself to the Ingeborg Nesbitt Clinic, INC, working for 6 months free of charge. INC was a small 19-bed facility that provided inpatient services, OBGYN services for babies born in Frederiksted, an emergency room, and an outpatient clinic. Dr. Tomas Evangelista and Dr. Al Sabedo manned the INC inpatient, and an African physician and I initially manned the ER, and I helped with all three. Little did I know that Dr. Dishabert had been responsible for many of the Filipino physicians coming to St. Croix, but I was allowed to work for free for 6 months as long as I wanted to. I grew in Dr. Dishabert's favor for our small OBGYN deliveries at INC, as well as other services, which was soon turned over to me as a responsibility, helped Charles Howard Memorial Hospital, where Dr. Dishabert was also medical director, get accredited. Still, our interaction was limited. I doubt Dr. Dishabert knew who I was other than I was willing to work. Governor King, who had won the election in 1974, changed everything in 1976. At that time, Dr. Dishabert and I were very active members of the Virgin Islands Medical Society, VIMS. Dr. Andre Sr. Galabert was president of VIMS. His son, Dr. Angelo Galabert, will be speaking today as well. And I was secretary. VIMS inserted itself in the process when Governor King attempted to recruit a commissioner of health. VIMS recruited Dr. Roy Lester Schneider as one of the candidates for Commissioner of Health. Governor King chose Dr. Schneider, but with the same stroke, removed Dr. Dishabert from both his responsibilities as medical director and assistant commissioner. We were blindsided. Dr. Alfred Heath, who was commissioner at the time, resigned. and Dr. John Moorhead became acting commissioner of health until Dr. Roy Lester Schneider was confirmed in 1977. An eager beaver, I, Cora, did not know what she was in for. Dr. Chabert never said anything to me about my responsibilities when I took over his position of Assistant Commissioner for St. Croix. I never received a single file or note from Dr. Chabert. I found it odd, for I knew he had to have had files, having been in the position for a good period of time. But I quickly learned this very quiet man was the silent boss. He was sending his message to the new administration silently but effectively. Fortunately, he grew to like my attitude and my work, and I was found to be worthy in every endeavor he and Dr. Andre Galabert Sr. championed. But another significant story must be told for all who understand that Dr. Chabert's love was first for St. Croix, second for St. Croix, and always for St. Croix. Medicine was the vehicle through which he would make sure St. Croix was reckoned with. I have many stories that illustrate his love for St. Croix, but I will tell you one more. This final story binds together his love for St. Croix and his passion for medicine, which is evident from the resolution for all the many healthcare providers, doctors, and nurses he convinced to give services in St. Croix and make it their home. The story is about establishing VA Equicare LLC, our only preferred provider organization, PPO. At that time, we continued to both be very active in the Virgin Islands Medical Society. I continued as the secretary of the society. Dr. George Rosenberg was trying to establish the PPO, but Cigna, the health insurer then, would not budge unless it was all Virgin Islands physicians. I had previously founded the Virgin Islands Medical Institute, VIMI, to improve the healthcare system by focusing on improving the quality of care delivered by physicians, especially in the hospital, which would reduce the costs the insurance companies desperately wanted. It was well established that when you improve quality, you reduce costs. I saw the purpose. I saw the need. Dr. Rosenberg needed St. Croix for Cigna to start the discussion, but could not make any headway in convincing the St. Croix physicians. He had spoken to Dr. Chabert and Dr. Andrew Galabert Sr. many times, but could not get any headway. So George Rosenberg came to me. I understood the PPO could benefit all of us, but to get St. Croix, I had to convince Dr. Chabert of how this would help St. Croix. Of course, you know the end result, because we have a PPO. We have VA Equicare. And although there were other crucial decision points in the ability to establish the PPO, the first step was to convince Dr. Chabert, for without his blessing, St. Croix would have been a no, and that would end it all, both for St. Thomas and St. Croix. I end where I begin. He never barked. He never made noise. He contributed in every way he could to the growth and development of healthcare, especially on the island of St. Croix. We honor and pay tribute to this silent man whose contributions are now articulated in this resolution and in the testimonies we will all share. His contributions will live on forever in our hearts and our history books. On behalf of all physicians, the Virgin Islands Medical Society, thank you for this resolution honoring Dr. Ralph Andre Chabert. Thank you. And that concludes my testimony.
Thank you so kindly, Dr. Christian. At this time, we will ask Ms. Ivy Ashwood, a registered nurse, to read into the record your testimony. You may proceed, Ms. Ashwood.
Good afternoon. Chairwoman, Senator Carla Joseph, members of the Committee of Government Operations, Veteran Affairs, Consumer Protection, other senator present, legislative staff, fellow testifiers, guests, and the viewing and listening audience. My name is Ivy Ashwood. I'm a retired clinical care supervisor on St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. It is an honor for me to give testimony in support of Bill 350102, an act honoring and commending Ralph A. D. Chabert for his outstanding contribution in the medical field and to the people of the Virgin Islands, and his many civic contributions to the community, especially to the island of St. Croix, and to name the Labor and Delivery Postpartum Unit Maternity Services at the 1F Louis Hospital and Medical Center North in his honor. I met Dr. Ralph A. D. Chabert in 1966 when I joined the obstetric staff at the Charles Howard Memorial Hospital as an RN and certified nurse midwife. I have worked with him for 33 years from Charles Howard Hospital to the present 1F Louis Hospital. Dr. D. Chabert loves St. Croix and the people. I have seen his dedication and selfless giving of his time and expertise to the people, not only in the health field, but in the wider community. He was the only trained obstetrician working at the hospital at the time, which means he was on call 24/7 beside his regular working hours. He was instrumental in having the sickle cell clinic in St. Croix through the March of Dimes. He also started a treatment clinic for heroin addiction in the early 1970s through the 1980s. This was not a government entity. It was his love and compassion to help those people overcome their habits. To say this clinic was successful would be an understatement. Under his administration, Charles Howard Hospital was accredited, and that accreditation extended to 1F Louis Hospital when we moved there. Dr. D. Chabert love and dedication to patients and staff knew no bounds. In 1989, when Hurricane Hugo struck St. Croix, he came to the hospital, to 1F Louis Hospital, that Sunday evening at 4 p.m. When the hurricane started and during the onslaught, Dr. D. Chabert worked through it all, making sure that patients, staff, and the people who were sheltering in the hospital from the trailer park was safe. Dr. D. Chabert was still on duty when I left on Tuesday morning. Lastly, I would like to thank the bill's sponsor, Senator Maurice James Esquire, for taking the lead in recommending the honor for Ralph A. D. Chabert, MD. I can think of no other person that deserves such hard work, that is so hardworking and deserves this honor, and who elevated the care of childbearing and non-childbearing women of St. Croix and beyond. I would also like to take this opportunity to encourage other senators to sign on to the bill. This includes my testimony, and thank you again for the opportunity, and I stand ready to answer any question you have.
Thank you so kindly, Ms. Ashwood. Madam Clerk, kindly note on the record the presence of Vice Chair of the committee, Senator Javon E. James Sr., and indicate our voting strength.
Madam Chair, you have 7 members present.
Thank you kindly. That's a full house. Thank you so kindly, Madam Clerk. Dr. Chabert, you are recognized. Dr. Angelo K. Chabert, you are recognized to read into the record your testimony, and I do forgive me for messing up the pronunciation of your first name. Kindly proceed.
Okay. But anyway, Honorable Senate President Novell Francis, Honorable Senators Maurice James and Kenneth Gittens, and Novell Francis, again, who sponsored this bill, 350102. Honorable other senators, Honorable other senators of the VI 35th Legislature, D. Chabert family, fellow distinguished testifiers, and any other Virgin Islanders in the room. It is our pleasure to be at this legislative recognition of Dr. Ralph A. Chabert. I am Dr. Angelo Galabert, a radiologist from Christiansted, St. Croix. The Virgin Islands Medical Society authorized Dr. Cora Christian and I to write the proposed resolution that is in the bill. It records Dr. Chabert's accomplishments and contributions of his family. Many people interacted with Dr. Chabert, the doctor, the business person, farmer, horse racing enthusiast, family man, or patient. His tenderheartednesses at each encounter motivated us. His advice always calm, brief, and effective. He typically did what he said he would do. He mentored many people, and he strongly encouraged some of us to be back in St. Croix. Although we stand on the shoulders of giants like Lincoln, Faraday, Madame Curie, King, Jobs, and Gates, Dr. Chabert nurtured our shoulders to be giant. The United States of America knows more about its easternmost possession because of what he did here. Chabert transactions in Crucian, Queen, and Company Quarter estates generated opportunities for thousands of Virgin Islanders who grew up here or who came here to live. The Chabert family and favorable U.S. legislation enabled our economy to harness the octane of what was once the world's largest oil refinery. If you know Dr. Chabert well, you know that he dislikes flying. He always wanted to be well-grounded on St. Croix. He was on duty each time a descendant of climate change hit our hospital. His VI contributions and our collective efforts will build a new hospital to serve visitors and Crucians for the next 50 years. During the last 50 years, the birth rate in the United States and many countries has dropped below the rates that nations need to replace their populations. Some reasons for this are that many women have limited access to affordable health care. Some women put off childbearing to get a higher education. Many people find child rearing to be too expensive. Many children lack after-school programs, and most women cannot work from home when their children or parents are sick. As a result, no post-1965 generation of Americans is large enough to sustain anyone's retirement expectations. Just ask yourself, why should I have to work when I am retired? These situations will compel us to depend more on obstetrics, gynecology, and reforms that will support all families. Dr. Chabert induced tremendous Virgin Islands family growth. We are the beneficiaries of his generosity, inclusiveness, and hard work. In recognition of his accomplishments, our elected officials should put his name on the Governor Juan F. Louis Hospital's OBGYN unit. Thank you.
And thank you so kindly, Dr. Galabert, for your testimony. We will now recognize Ms. Vivian Ebsen-Flood for your testimony and welcome. Kindly proceed, Nurse Ebsen-Flood, and by reading your testimony into the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Vivian I. Ebsen-Flood. Good afternoon, Honorable Senator Carla J. Joseph, Chairperson of the Committee on Government Operations, Veterans Affairs, and Consumer Protection. The Honorable Senate President Norville Francis, Vice Chairperson Honorable Jevon E. James Sr., Committee members Honorable Senators Kenneth L. Gittins, Samuel Carrion, Alma Francis Heiliger, Ray Fonseca, and Milton E. Potter, Honorable non-committee members who may be present, testifiers, staff, the listening and viewing audience. I am Vivian I. Ebsen-Flood, former Executive Director of Frederiksted Healthcare, Inc., Frederiksted Health Center, Ingeborg Nesbitt Clinic, the founding Executive Director of Frederiksted Healthcare, Inc., former Commissioner of the Virgin Islands Department of Health, former Commissioner of the Virgin Islands Department of Human Services, and now a private citizen involved in civic and healthcare activities locally and on the mainland. I am humbled to be invited and pleased to be present to provide testimony in support of the Honorable Senator Maurice C. James's Bill number 35-0102, an act honoring and commending Ralph D. Chabert, MD, for outstanding contributions in the medical field to the people of the Virgin Islands and his many civic contributions to the community, especially the island of St. Croix, and to name the labor and delivery postpartum unit maternity services at Wang F. Louis Hospital and Medical Center North in his honor. As I reviewed Bill number 35-0102 and read the noted whereas clauses, I must emphatically indicate that I will briefly emphasize many of them in my testimony based on personal knowledge and experience as I render my support of the proposed legislation. In support of the measure, I also wish to suggest that consideration be given for a provision in the legislation that would allow the same honor and commendation being considered today to be transferable to the new labor and delivery postpartum unit maternity services in the pending new hospital facility on St. Croix. Inclusion of this provision, if not previously considered, and if protocol so allows, will facilitate that the effort that the legacy, honor, and significance will not be lost once the Governor Wang F. Louis Hospital and Medical Center North labor and delivery postpartum unit location is no longer utilized for the indicated patient services. On many occasions, it has become practice that when an area is repurposed, the honor previously bestowed is lost. When it is not redesignated, relocated, or transferred, and therefore the honorees' recognition of their significant contribution and historical perspectives are lost. In speaking to Bill 35-0102, I must frankly disclose that Dr. Ralph A. D. Chabert, his offsprings and siblings, are relatives, as they are cousins of my late father, George A. Ebbison, and he has also been a longtime colleague in developing, sustaining, and improving the healthcare system of the U.S. Virgin Islands with my late mother, Enid M. Ebbison, for over 50 years. But ironically enough, I can safely state that sitting before you today is one of those noted more than 15,000 obstetrical deliveries on the island of St. Croix. Yes, I am one of those Crucian babies that he continued to maintain contact with throughout my professional and personal endeavors. I have had the pleasure of having numerous conversations with and received genuine encouragement, as well as follow-up interest from Dr. Ralph A. D. Chabert, as I considered, embarked, and advanced in my career in the healthcare field. He never missed the opportunity and remained consistent in his focus to plant the seed while always doing his best to recruit young Virgin Islanders to return home to build and serve their community. I was privileged to have worked with Dr. D. Chabert, or the Chief, as he was affectionately called, in his role as Chief of Obstetrics and Gynecology, as a fledgling nursing summer student, graduate nurse, and then full-fledged registered nurse on the labor and delivery and postpartum units and the obstetrical community health clinics at the then St. Croix Hospital and Community Health Center. When the Chief spoke, everyone respectfully listened. He never failed to set, expect, and maintain his established high standards of care of experienced or novice healthcare staff in the combined health and hospital system of care, a combined model of care that works seamlessly together for the best healthcare outcomes of the patient, their family, and the community, long before it became a standard of care on the U.S. mainland. In addition, like others, I can also attest to having also been on the receiving end of his expertise, care, and concern as a patient in need of emergency services, while remaining and keeping me calm in a life-threatening situation with a favorable outcome. Dr. Ralph A. D. Chabert was and remains soft-spoken by nature, but I have had the opportunity to witness on numerous occasions his demonstration of his lack of fear to be hands-on, while expressing his expectations softly but forcefully when it came to healthcare services, patient care, and expected healthcare outcomes. I was a member of the staff on hand and witnessed his work, leadership, and endurance together with other staff members at the then St. Croix Hospital and Community Health Center during the 27 hours of rage and devastation caused by the Category 4 Hurricane Hugo on September 17, 1989. As we weathered the storm and faced the one certainty of residents, patients, mothers, babies, and a community needing our care, he was ever present and doing his part. No task was too menial. He was hands-on and boots on the ground as we worked together to return and initiate hospital services at Charles Howard Memorial Hospital, making accommodations as needed, transferring patients to Puerto Rico for care via helicopters and on Coast Guard cutters, and then transitioned hospital services to the U.S. military deployed medical units. Yes, the famous DEP-MEDs that were originally made for men in the field and had never been used in civilian life to now be used and accommodated for obstetrical and gynecological patients in the midst of the devastation and the vast unknowns. Dr. Ralph A.D. Chabert and the seasoned healthcare leadership team never wavered. We would always share a light moment during it all, and that now where we used to park is now where we work. As we made the accommodations daily to provide quality care and make the patients as well as staff comfortable despite the situation. Although he was retired, I could count on receiving a call, scheduling a meeting, receiving a message, or getting a visit from Dr. Ralph A.D. Chabert in all of my former roles of Executive Director of Frederiksted Health Center and Ingeborg Nesbitt Clinic, Founding Executive Director of Frederiksted Healthcare, Inc., Commissioner of the Virgin Islands Department of Health, and the Commissioner of the Virgin Islands Department. Always providing words of wisdom, matters of concern, ideas for improvement and encouragement for the continued provision of services in the best interests of the patients and the residents of St. Croix and these beautiful United States Virgin Islands. In closing, I could go on and on, but in the interest of time allotted for testimony and based upon my side-by-side experiences with the observations of Dr. Ralph A.D. Chabert, I can safely state without unwavering fear of contradiction, Dr. Ralph A.D. Chabert, a humble stalwart in our healthcare arena specifically and our community in general, not forgetting his love for people, horse racing, and farming, is most deserving of this honor. Dr. Ralph A.D. Chabert has spent his career and lifetime contributing to and shaping the healthcare services, as well as a community in the United States Virgin Islands and St. Croix in particular, and for that, he should be duly recognized with this honor. I remain in support of this measure. Again, ask for your consideration of the suggested provisions if protocol so allows. Thank you for the invitation and remain humbled by the opportunity to provide testimony and input on Bill number 35-0102. I remain present and available for any questions this committee may have. Thank you.
And thank you so kindly, Ms. Vivian I. Ebsen Flood. Thank you so much, testifiers, for your testimony before this committee. Colleagues, we will begin our round of questioning with one round of 3 minutes. Senator Ray Fonseca in the legislative chambers in St. Thomas, you are recognized for your 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and special welcome to all the distinguished panel of testifiers, and greetings to the listening audience. I am definitely in support of giving this honor and recognition to Mario Chabert. While I have never met him, I know Ralph de Chabert, I'm sorry. While I've never met Ralph, I know his son, Mario de Chabert, very well. I've been to the place where you have his animals, et cetera, et cetera. As a matter of fact, him and I have traveled many times back and forth in different islands in the Caribbean, with his animals and thing, had couple fowl and dog and thing, so I know him very well, very respectable man, Ralph D. Chabert, particularly the testimony of Dr. Cora Christian, Vivian Epson Flood, two ladies that I know and respect very well. But I'm very interested to go back to that time, Cora, where when you said that Dr. Heath was the assistant commissioner at the time and Dr. Roy Snyder came in and the governor had appointed him. It seems like politics going way back in that time was kind of similar to how it is now. Some of the governors make decisions, I guess, in the best interest of the people. It was very interesting. But I'd like to ask you, Cora, I know you have a lot of stories of how him being the silent master. Can you give us some more of those nice stories of Dr. Chabert silently letting you know he ran things?
Okay, first, good afternoon. Thank you, Senator Fonseca. I'd like to clarify that Dr. Heath was commissioner, not assistant commissioner. He was commissioner. And because of Governor King's removal of Dr. Chabert in protest, I want to add a little more color. In protest, Dr. Heath resigned. Now, Dr. John Moorhead, who, I'm sorry, I should have identified myself. Dr. Cora Christian, Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Virgin Islands Medical Institute. Of the Medical Society. Should I begin again? I can go forward.
Yes.
Okay. So I was just making a correction that Dr. Heath was Commissioner of Health. He was Commissioner of Health under the previous administration when Governor King won. And he decided out of protest and I'll tell you how that happened. We were all gathered together at the cafeteria in the Charles Howard Hospital. And, one of my uncles, Uncle Joe, who had been an accountant or something, they raised a question because this was the governor's first opportunity to be able to give information. And Dr. Chabert was sitting there quietly in his room. He didn't come down to the session. And people were just fussing and going on and on about this. So at the end of the conversation, the governor made a decision that he was going to go up to Dr. Chabert and talk to him about what had happened. And I was fortunately able to be in a situation where I could accompany the individuals. And he just sat there and he listened quietly. But my correction is that Dr. Heath was commissioner. And out of that, he protested and he resigned. As subsequently, you said to give a lot of more colorful stories. I think what is interesting is that the Virgin Islands Medical Society, and I'll be brief in this particular situation, is the recognized organization for physicians in the territory. But we don't have the same resources because we're not money-based. And therefore, everybody that contributed. So now I want to give you the story. When we were looking at the development of where the Wang Louis Hospital is now, which, as you know, was a contribution from the Chabert family, there was a lot of conversation because Dr. Schneider and Dr. Chabert became very close. And initially, the place was going to be at Estate Slough. I don't know how many of the individuals there, but I'm sure Ms. Ashwood and Vivian Flood, we all know where Slough was. That's where the heart of the maternal and child health programs were in the community health section. That's where the hospital was supposed to be. But Dr. Chabert came up with this wonderful opportunity to say, look, you need adjacent services if you're going to have a hospital. You need to have places where people can go and eat and congregate and buy things and so forth. This is the inner conversation now. This isn't what's going on in the public. And he's saying, I'm going to get my family. Mario was his brother. I'm going to get my family. And I think the Chaberts had a board that was made up mostly of the siblings to give a grant of the land where the hospital presently is. So not only was he a physician, he was also really very philanthropic about giving the hospital. And I failed in my recognition because I didn't know Danielle was in the audience to recognize his daughter who's sitting in the audience. I saw her earlier. You know, she's a pharmacist. She too works very ardently for the hospital. So that's another vignette. But there are many stories, and I'm sure Vivian and Angela have some that they can contribute. But the hospital is there because, again, of the Dishaberts.
Thank you very much. And Madam Chair, at the appropriate time, I will cast my vote proudly in support of Bill number 35-0102. Blessings, blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Fonseca. Senator Samuel Carrion, you are recognized for your 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to my colleagues that are here present, to testifiers, and then good afternoon to the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands. I first would like to start by commending and thanking the sponsor of this measure, this resolution, Senator Maurice James, because clearly this is long overdue, and it's so crucial when we recognize our own and are able to honor them. So it's very fitting. Thank you for bringing this forward. And of course, I will be in full support of this resolution. Now, let me ask the testifiers, and I thank you for sharing your experiences and what you've received during that relationship and that time serving with Dr. Chabert. But if there's anything that comes to your mind that you remember of an encounter with him that still stays very fresh in your mind, if you could share an experience. I know in your testimony, everyone shared how he was a quiet, a gentle giant, but nevertheless a man of action who would not say much, but do much. Is there anything, any particular story you would like to share with us that you still hold dear to your heart, or something that made you laugh and when you think about it, brings you joy about Dr. Chabert that any of you would like to share?
Well, I can say that as a child, I used to get together with the Chabert family, and I know we had some beach days. I remember one beach day that we had. It was out by Longford, I think, and he gave me the best bottle of guava berry I've ever had. And it was great. It was from his farm, so I really appreciated the mangoes that they had, all the farming that they did and everything. And I think he loved St. Croix so much that you could tell that he was of this place, and he worked the farms, the people, and he did so much. And I know that I started working with Dr. Chabert when I was 8 years old. Call it forced child labor. But I was working in the 3-story building that the Chabert family had in town, and I got to meet Miss Annie, his mom, and knew her
30
dearly.
seconds.
And I think that the most significant thing is that Dr. Chabert realized that we needed more space because more doctors were coming to the island. So as the Sunny Isle District developed, he set aside some land to build the medical center that's now there, the Island Medical Center. So he was instrumental in creating more space to keep more doctors on St. Croix.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that very personal story and how I'm pretty sure he influenced and shaped your life for you to get into the medical field that you're in. So I really, once again, will stand in support of this measure. So thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you so kindly, Senator Carrion. At this time, the chair will recognize the next senator to ask questions. Senator Milton Potter, you're recognized for your 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the recognition. Madam Chair, I definitely rise in support of this initiative, and I want to commend the bill sponsor for having the wisdom and the foresight to identify Dr. Ralph A. Chabert for special recognition here before us today. I always say, and I firmly believe, that progressive societies honor and commend their own when they achieve excellence. That is what we do. And absolutely, Dr. Chabert is well deserving of this honor given his history and his contributions to this community, particularly the island of St. Croix, for his service in the field of medicine, in particular obstetrics and gynecology. So it is only fitting to have the maternity ward, the labor and delivery ward on St. Croix to receive his name. So he will live on, in perpetuity, given the existence of this facility, and his name will be there above that door. But I wanted to ask the testifiers today if they could share with us the best piece of advice that they have received from Dr. Chabert over the years. So if anything stands out among the testifiers here before us today, that they can share, any piece of advice or the best piece of advice that you received from Dr. Chabert over the years.
Vivian Ebbison Flood. Senator Potter, to speak to that, I think the one thing that stands out in mind with all the experiences has been the advice that you don't have to be the loudest voice in the room. You just have to be firm in your conviction if you know it is correct. And that was always his basis. He would listen,
30
he would
seconds.
smile, and he still, in his smile, you would know that he had his plan. He would listen to what you had to say, but he was firm in what direction he wanted to go in, what direction he was going in. And those were the things on those phone calls that I would hear from him, to be firm in your conviction. And I think that is sound advice in anything that you face.
That's definitely sound advice. Anyone else?
This is Dr. Christian. I would dim it in 3 words: never give up. He challenged me so much to give up. No, we don't want you here. Go someplace else. Never give up.
Perseverance, never give up.
Yes,
Well, those are definitely some powerful pieces of advice, and it speaks to the character of the man. Perseverance, persistence, never giving up. That is advice that will take you around the world. And as you mentioned, Commissioner Flood, it doesn't require loud, rah-rah, and dramatics to be effective. And he was effective while being a quiet, understated individual. So definitely his contributions will be absolutely remembered. And at the appropriate time, I will absolutely vote in the affirmative for Dr. Chabert to receive this well-deserved honor. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the time.
And thank you so kindly, Senator Potter. We are hearing a lot of good things about Dr. Chabert, as to be expected. I also have a family member who was a head nurse of the maternity ward at one time at the Wang F. Louis Hospital. Her name is Nurse Wawin, Estherlyn Wawin. And she spoke volumes. See what a small world it is? And she spoke volumes. I used to fly over here to St. Croix to babysit her children so she could have that time to actually put in the work there. And she spoke highly about the type of individual, the type of caliber of a man that Dr. Chabert was. At this time, I would like to recognize Senator Francis Heiliger. Senator Francis Heiliger is joining us remotely as well. Senator Francis Heiliger, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
You are recognized. Thank you. You are recognized for your 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon to my colleagues, to the testifiers, to the people of the territory. It is very heartwarming as I sit here and listen to all the wonderful stories of Dr. Chabert. and all the things that he has done on behalf of the people of the territory. But to the testifiers, the questions I would like to ask specifically, I think it was the first young lady, one of the young ladies that spoke when I was listening to the testimony, spoke about the doctor working through the hurricanes. Do you believe that during the hurricanes, all the additional work and safety things that he did on behalf of the people, do you think that it helped? How do you think significantly things might have been different if he had not done what he did?
I think in speaking, Vivian Ebbison Flood, I think in having the opportunity to work and weather the storm with him, his presence at the facility during the storm gave a level of confidence to all of us that were there that didn't know what the unknown held. We know that we were called into work. I know that I was on vacation, and Miss Ivy Ashwood nicely canceled my vacation and was called into work. And when he was there with us, there was really a team. And there was a level, you had administrators as well as Mr. Lawrence Bashton and Ms. Norma Glenn. They weathered the storm with us. And so the staff who didn't know what they were facing, who was caused to leave their family, were given that reassurance that we would make this through.
Okay, I'm very happy to hear that. And this is also to the testifiers, what are 3 words that would come to mind to describe Dr. Chabert?
Compassionate, Ivy Ashwood. I would say the 3 words is compassionate, compassion, love, and integrity.
And this is the
30
this
seconds.
this is for a Christian. I would say effective, silent, but definitely clear of mind.
Well, one of the things I'm noticing, it almost seems like each of you who just shared 3 different types of words from your interaction, you express what you took from your interaction from him. And that's a good thing when somebody could mean so many different things to so many different people. When it came to when I was listening to the testifiers, and they spoke about, oh, my time is up. Madam Chair, could I just finish up this last question?
You may proceed with wrap-up, Senator Francis Heiliger.
Thank you so much. A lot of times we know people specifically for their work, and that's a beautiful thing as we're trying to name the ward after him in regards to our beautiful babies born here in the territory. But can anyone also share to the type of impact you believe that he had on the community as a whole for what he did outside of work?
This is Dr. Christian again. I think that the resolution, I didn't realize it wouldn't be read for the public to hear, but I think the resolution really details in volumes all of the work that he did outside. And I know there's not enough time, but we were also interested in developing what is called a continued care residential community, which would help to take care of older people. We didn't get it done, but there was always another movement, another thing that we as a community, Dr. Chabert, Dr. Andrea Galbraith Sr., all of us helping these younger ones like Angela and myself coming up, even though I'm older than Angela, to really aspire to do things for the community. So I think in reading the resolution, you're going to get a clear sense of his contributions across the board, not just in medicine.
Well, I think I personally read through it, but as testifiers, a lot of times we ask these questions so the public can hear from the very people that interacted with him, so they also could better understand the type of impact that he had, not only as a doctor, but also as a person that resided and was a part of this very community. But I appreciate all the testifiers today. I will be voting in the affirmative. And thank you, Madam Chair, for the additional time.
And thank you so much, Senator Francis Heiliger, for your line of questioning. Senator Novell E. Francis Jr., Senator President, you are recognized for your 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to you, my colleagues. Good afternoon to the testifiers, and good afternoon to the people of the Virgin Islands. I'm not a member of this committee, but I'm very happy to be here with a great sense of pride. And, I'm very much in support of this resolution moving forward. And I'll encourage those individuals that may be watching and viewing that it'll be good if you could get a copy of the resolution, because there's a lot of detailed information in the resolution that really just do justice to Dr. Ralph A. Chabert, MD. So my 3 words would be distinguishable, unassuming, and certainly a gentleman. When you look at Dr. Chabert, and I've had the opportunity, being the son of a nurse, to see him over the years, and he delivered me as well. And certainly midwife Ashwood, it's good to see you. I'm here today. You got some history under your belt as well. 15,000 infants were delivered by Dr. Chabert over the years. That is profound. That is profound in this small community when you look at this one little island that was able to produce so many under him. So I felt a sense of pride because, of course, being a young individual that been around the hospital for a number of years and being able to see individuals that look like you over the years. I'm talking about certainly Dr. Chabert. I'm talking about Dr. Glenn, Dr. Angelo Gallabé Sr., I'm talking about Randall Doc James, certainly Cora Christian, Dr. Claudius Henry, Dr. Lloyd Henry, Dr. Melvin Evans. These people, Dr. Snyder, these are individuals that you were able to see, and of course we had the Filipino doctors, the Poblete, the Batanga, Camoys, Dr. Sue, and all those individuals that came as well, Dr. Sabero, Evangelista. But it was so critical that when you were able to see an individual that looked like you, felt a sense of comfort. Dr. Green as well, Dr. Christensen, so those are people that come to my mind every time we have these conversations with these individuals. A lot of time people scoff at us because we do move resolutions. But if we don't recognize those individuals that pay and contributed to this community, who will? Who will? A lot of times you serve, and you're gone and forgotten. These individuals contributed immensely to this territory, to this island, and it's definitely the responsibility rests with us to be able to make sure that they're recognized for their work. So, Dr. Chabert, Dr. Chabert, I totally agree with the assertion by Ms. Vivian Flood, that in respect to, we just don't want the North to name after you, but we want to make sure that we put language in, and there may be some language that allow for it to transition into the new hospital, new facilities as well. But we want to make sure that those specific language is in the bill so that could happen. I often wonder why these gentlemen, Dr. James and Dr. Chabert, took on the OB-GYN physician role. God knows why, right? But that often crossed my mind. But nonetheless, they have done it and they have done well. I wish we had more time that I could ask some questions, because I'll certainly like to pick your brain, especially Ms. Ashwood, in terms of what is your most pleasurable moment, most memorable moment with Dr. Chabert while you served under him. Maybe if you could answer that on the chair's times, I'll appreciate it, as well as Dr. Cora Christian. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Ms. Ashwood, you would like to proceed with answering the question?
I'm Ivy Ashwood. My most memorable moment.
Just pull the mic closer to you and speak directly into it, because we have been recorded.
My most memorable moment was not only in the labor and delivery, but in the community, especially with the heroin addicts that was here in the 70s, and the compassion and love, the time that he spent with them. They could come in and call him if they were in crisis, and he would stop, talk to them, help them over, whatever it is, make sure they were all right. And then afterwards, when they were able to overcome their habits. He went in the community to the employees and got jobs for them. And I look at that as, you know, he was a father to them. And many of them, by the late 80s, we had none because he had worked and he was doing it on his own and spending his own money for medication. But he was there for them any time of the day, any time of the night that they were in crisis. He would be there for them.
Thank you so much for that testimony, Nurse Ashwood. Dr. Christian, would you like to add? We're not. Okay, good.
Christian. Yeah, this is Dr. Cora Christian. This may seem a little contradictory, but it's not. When they were developing the Medical Arts Center in Sunny Isle, I came home to go to Frederickstead, where my father was born. And I'm a strong personality in certain ways, like Vivian and all the people who are there. And Dr. Disherberg, you know, I was gaining his confidence, and I was right there with him and Dr. Andre Galabert. They were really trying to get me to come to Sunny Isle. And I kept saying, no, I want to go to Frederickstead. So we kind of like, you know, these are like father figures to us, you know, when we're coming in, even though we may be 20 years apart, we really, you know, I never called him anything but Dr. Disherberg, like Dr. Smith in St. Thomas. So I am now rebuffing what he's telling me. I'm going to Frederickstead. But he ended up telling me, this is a memorable, Cora, you were right. You were right to go to Frederickstead. Go where the need is. Because he always did that. He always did that. So my point is that sometimes when I know with younger folks, you know, we have kids and so forth, they butt up against us and we don't understand their motivation. It made me realize what he said to me about never giving up. If you really are determined about doing something for your community, don't let anybody stand in your way. And that's the way he lived his life. And he appreciated that when others did the same. So that's a very memorable, I have many, but that's one of the memorable ones it came to mind. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Dr. Christian, for sharing that memory. The chair will now recognize Majority Leader Kenneth Gittins for his 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to all. I truly appreciate the 3 minutes, but we know that 3 minutes is not sufficient to speak on the great doctor that we're here to honor today. You know, I am so pleased to be one of the sponsors alongside Senator Maurice James and the Senate President Novalie Francis Jr. on this honoring and commendation of Dr. Ralph A. Chabert. Chabert. Tell me the correct pronunciation there. Chabert. All right, thank you. There's so much pronunciation to this. But I want the public to know, too, that, you know, great minds think alike. And we as a legislature could come together as well to work with each other. Senator Maurice James actually had preempted me in this measure. But again, 3 of us put our heads together and said, we will work this and see this through. So I am really happy that we're here today for this. And as the Senate President championed about, more than 15,000 babies in over the years. Wow. Wow. I'm not sure when we're going to hear that again from another individual here in the territory. But I want to thank each of you for your testimony. Dr. Christian, Nurse Ashwood, Nurse Flood, my sister, Dr. Galabert, all of you for your testimony today. But Dr. Christian, I must tell you that when you started to talk and you started to name people and whatnot, Dr. Severo, Dr. Evangelista, Dr. Christian and whatnot, man, you really threw me back to the Department of Health days and remembered my mom always talking about these individuals. You all were like superheroes that she worked with in the Department of Health. And I just want to say thank you so much.
30 seconds.
I feel like I know Department of Health better than I know the Virgin Islands Police Department. Just because I've run through all the halls of the Department of Health, wherever you guys were at, even at Slava. You know, so I want to thank each of you truthfully. Miss Nurse Ashwood, do you remember Nurse Corinne Mesa? Speak into the mic. Don't
Yes, I did.
Okay, she sends her regards. She's trying to log on. That's my aunt. I think she joined you all in 1967.
Yes.
Long before I was born, with your indulgence, Madam Chair. Long before I was born, but you all did great work.
Thank you.
And I hope that you all are still talking with the new nurses as well so that they could know some of the, you know, the little tricks that you all used to do. I'm going to tell you one thing that I really admired about you nurses back in the day was wearing your whites and having on your hat and whatnot. Today, everybody wearing scrub. You can't tell the doctor from the groundskeeper. You know, so
that
I mean,
is the truth.
At some
That
point,
is
we
the
need
truth.
to be able to define this thing again so that we could know, you know. But I want to say thank you all and thank the Chabert family again for all that you have done for the Virgin Islands and in particular St. Croix with the development of Soniel Shopping Center and the donation of the property for where our hospital is built today. You know, again, because of big hearts like the Chabert family, we are where we're at today. We should be a lot further ahead. We have a lot of work to do, and by the grace of God, we will get there. Thank you all so much for your testimony here today, and looking forward to putting a final stamp on this to get his name up in that hospital. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Maurice James and Senate President Francis on this matter as well.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Majority Leader, for those remarks. Mr. Vice Chair, Senator Javon E. James Sr., you are recognized for your 3 minutes.
Greetings to the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the time, I stand in full support of Bill number 35-0102. I don't have those memories of running through the halls and all those good stories like my colleagues, but probably my mom knows about him. However, as an individual who haven't really been around back in those days, one thing I know how to do is read. And this resolution speaks to a Virgin Islander who has done great things. And I really hope and pray that moving forward, that we can have more young Virgin Islands really understand our history. I know right now they're going through the changes with the history books. These things need to be in the history books to inspire young Virgin Islanders to do the same. And not just for him, but for many others. Our Virgin Islands history is outdated. And history is being made every single day. But everybody who understands education and curriculum must be updated every so often. So I say all that to say to the family, thank you. And the reason why I have to say thank you to the family because many times we see individuals in their profession, but they don't see the many times where they are away from their family. We as lawmakers, we go through the same. And sometimes it's a thankless job because sometimes you can save a baby and sometimes you can't save a baby. Sometimes individuals might say, well, oh, it's a doctor's fault. But listen to me. No profession is easy. And the fact that this gentleman brought forward 15,000 Crucians, because once you're born here, he's a Crucian, right? 15,000 Crucians. So you know what I mean? We had Middle Easterners being born or delivered by him. We had Caucasian people, Hispanic people, any race, ethnic group you can think of. And it speaks to a very diverse culture in the Virgin Islands. And that's something we have to embrace. So I hope with the resolution we have here today, that it can be staple in Virgin Islands history. And when we do have that ceremony for the doctor, I really hope and pray it's not just one of those things where the news come there and then we do one thing, one bap, bap, and then go home. It has to be major. Because when last have we done something of this nature in the legislature? So to the sponsor of this measure, kudos to you. Thank you for having that foresight and vision. And like I said, I hope and pray with the temporary structure that we have, it doesn't become permanent at JFL North. So I really look forward to seeing this come into fruition, and thank you once again to the testifiers for being here today. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you so kindly, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, rather. Madam Clerk, kindly place 3 minutes on the clock for me. I would like to take this opportunity to, first of all, commend the bill sponsors of this legislation, Senator James, Maurice James, Senator Novell Francis Jr. for putting this measure together, and I believe Senator Gittens as well. Okay, so it is really fitting, and that's one of the joys I derive as being a chairperson of this committee, because a lot of the resolutions come through, and so you get to see insight into the workings of persons who have given back to our community and hear really core values from persons who have worked with them, as well as their family members. So at this time, I wanted to recognize his daughter who is here with us. I know you haven't supplied any testimony, but I do have a question for you, Ms. Danielle Chabert. How is it, because you are working and you're living with somebody who's doing such great things, they seem almost like godlike or just like a major superhero. I like cartoons, okay? That's one of my favorite things to watch and just wind down. But you are there in the home with someone who is just flying and doesn't have necessarily a cape. How is it living with your father, Dr. Chabert?
Good afternoon. I'm sorry, protocol being established. I don't know everybody's name because
you're
I
fine.
wasn't
You're
planning to
fine.
speak. It's he doesn't bring that stuff home. So until you hear it from other people, you don't really know. And there's a whole lot that you don't know. On a personal level, he has helped people on a personal level, individually, along with all of the things that have been discussed here and in the resolution. There are a lot of people that he's helped personally. For example, the heroin addict program. I mean, imagine being a little girl sitting in the back of a convertible and being babysat by Lalo, one of these heroin addicts recovering. You know, that was the kind of thing, like you said, you talk about family and that kind of stuff, but that's a history from when you're younger that you hear about it. You don't see it. So until people speak about it, you're like, really?
Mm-hmm.
God, honestly? But one thing I would like to add at this point, I've been thinking lately, ever since my mom passed away last year, I've had a lot on my plate, but being the family that's supporting my father, there were many days I'm heading out to school and he's coming through the door.
Time.
I haven't seen him that evening. So it would be an honor to me if the committee could consider adding my mom to that resolution, that recognition, because without the great woman behind the great man, he wouldn't have been able to go out and do all the things he did. She was at home keeping everything going, and his support there. So I would like the committee to consider that. I mean, you may or may not, but
It's noted.
yeah, you didn't know it because, like you said, he was quiet. He didn't come in and remark that he's done this and he's done that. You know about the shopping center. You know about he worked here. He worked hard. So quite unspoken.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chabert. And I always tend to ask that question because some of us only see what is happening outside of the home, but it's truly the person at home and what the family is very important. That's the nucleus of any community, nation is experiencing. And so I really wanted to thank you for making time to be here. And it is noted your recommendation. We'll now ask the...
Senator Joseph?
Yes, Dr. Christian, you wanted to note something?
I want, yes, I'm so glad that Danielle brought that up because, as you know, when I came into the society here, many women were not physicians. You know, we were nurses and companions. But Millie, we know her as Millie Dishaver. She was so attentive. She and Edith Galabert, who was Andrew Galabert Sr., they took me under their wing because we started a situation where we would actually honor the men, the physicians, but it was the women, the spouses of the doctors that really carried the medical society through in our conferences and so forth. And Millie and Edith and Dr. Sue's wife and so forth, there were many of them. But I'm so glad Danielle talked about her mom because Millie was always so supportive. So really, I think it would be appropriate to really add her to the resolution if the sponsors would consider that. I certainly, as one of the kind of behind the scenes writers, would really recommend that. I think that's really necessary. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Christian, for those words, adding further emphasis on adding Ms. Millie Dishaver to the resolution. We'll now recognize the bill sponsor, Senator Marie C. James, Esquire, for her 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to everyone again. I wanted to ask if you know, because I agree with you, we learn more about our parents from others, right? And I wanted to ask, do you know why he wanted to become a doctor? Did he ever talk about what motivated him to become a doctor?
I can't say we ever discussed why he wanted to go into medicine, but I do know obstetrics was not what he wanted to do.
Really?
He always told me that was the thing that he hated the most. And for some reason, at the end of it all, after he did all his residencies, that's what he actually went into. I think he wanted to do more surgery or something like that, but who knows? But for us, I guess that was a godsend because he never considered staying in the States where he was. And let me tell you, he had offers. Because my father is one of those who got 100% on all his exams, that kind of thing. So he had offers, but he, as soon as he finished his residency, straight home.
He said to come back home.
Straight home.
Yeah. I actually know midwife Ashwood because she was there when I had my first baby. And I was very happy to hear Dr. Christian say that we really don't, it's sometimes we forget the woman behind the man, you know, the nurses behind the doctors, you know, these people who really make everything work out, everything work. I wanted to also say that I don't really have any, I only had that question. I was wondering what motivated him to become a doctor, you know? That was the one question that I had. But I do want to say that in a conversation I had yesterday with a friend of mine, she was saying how the legislature provides the community with data, because if we don't ask people questions, especially agencies and departments, questions, sometimes people don't know. And other than the legislature getting that information out, we wouldn't know as a community because they don't do the data collection that they should. But on another note, if we don't have these resolutions where people tell us these stories like Dr. Christian was telling us today, especially, and you know, all of you sitting here, we wouldn't know these things. And it's really good that the legislature serves as, in a sense, a depository of information, of stories of our people. that should eventually, as the young senator said, end up in history books. And so it's wonderful when we do these types of hearings where we hear about our own people and people also who came here to the territory. When Lutheran services were here and I learned about Sister Emma coming from St. Kitts and coming here and serving and doing what she did, and you know, you recognize earlier the chairperson recognized the independence celebration of St. Kitts and what they're doing there. It just makes me feel proud as a Caribbean person that people migrated here, contributed. I clearly remember when the doctors came from the Philippines. I remember they were just part of my life growing up, you know? And when I went to the States, I realized that a lot of my friends didn't see doctors of color, nurses of color, and how inspirational you just coming back to the territory like your father did, like Dr. Chabert did, you know, like the nurses did, coming back and working here, coming here to the territory, how important. So I really didn't have any question except that, but I wanted to put on the record how important the legislature really, when we have these hearings, how we're contributing to history being recorded. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so kindly, Senator James. Do I hear a motion? Senator Kenneth Gittins, you are recognized for your motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and colleagues, I move that Bill number 35-0102, an act honoring and commending Ralph A. D. Chabert, MD, for outstanding contributions in the medical field to the people of the Virgin Islands and his many civic contributions to the community, especially to the island of St. Croix, and to name the labor and delivery postpartum unit maternity services at the Governor Juan Francisco Luis Hospital and Medical Center North in his honor. I move that it be voted upon favorably here in this committee and be forwarded to the full body, forwarded to the Rules and Judiciary Committee for further consideration. I so move.
Second.
Bill number 35-0102 has been properly moved by Senator Kenneth L. Gittins, seconded by Senator Javon James Sr., as well as Alma Francis Heiliger. Roll call on Bill number 35-0102.
Senator Samuel Carrion. Senator Carrion, yay. Senator Ray Fonseca.
Yay.
Senator Fonseca, yay. Senator Alma Francis Heiliger.
Yes.
Senator Francis Heiliger, yay. Senator Kenneth L. Gittins. Senator Gittins, yay. Senator Javon E. James Sr. Senator James Sr., yay. Senator Carla J. Joseph.
Yes.
Senator Joseph, yay. Senator Milton E. Potter.
Yes.
Senator Potter, yay.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Bill number 35-0102, an act honoring and commending Ralph A. D. Chabert, MD, for outstanding contributions in the medical field to the people of the Virgin Islands and his many civic contributions to the community, especially to the island of St. Croix, and to name the labor and delivery postpartum unit maternity services at the Wang F. Louis Hospital and Medical Center North in his honor has been favorably voted upon in this committee and will be forwarded to the Committee on Rules and Judiciary for further consideration and action. I would like to recognize The Majority Leader, Kenneth L. Gittins, for your point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank everyone for their support and all the good information that came out here and Dr. Chabert here today. But I wanted to ask Daniel to just at least let us know that Dad is doing okay and that you left the TV on for him to look at this proceedings and that I believe he's about 93 years old now, right? Yes. So all the discussion we spoke about, we didn't even talk about his age at this time.
93.
Okay, thank you. Give him our regards, please.
I will, thank
But just give us a little update, not personal, but just a little update for us to know that he's doing well. Thank you.
Well, you know, good days, bad days. Ever since my mom passed, of course, that makes a big difference in how the good days are and the bad days. So it's hard going through all the first birthdays without, the first Christmas, the first Thanksgiving, all of that. We've successfully gone through that. We just celebrated the 1-year anniversary of her passing in August. Went really fast. So a lot of emotions there, but he's hanging in. You know, I stay with him. He's holding on. Yeah, he's definitely holding on. Thank you.
Senator Marie C. James, you are recognized for your point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank the committee for voting. It's going to go to the rules where I am a member, and I'm pretty sure it's going to go through smoothly. My sponsors with me, both Senator Noel Francis and Senator Kenneth Gittins, I'm sure agree with me that the recommendations will be made. Both recommendations will be made. And I just want to thank the testifiers for coming out and supporting this and advocating for this, because it really came out of your desire to make this happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Senator James. At this time, the chair will allow the testifiers to place on the record a 30 seconds wrap up. We'll start with you, Nurse Ashwood. Ms. Ashwood, kindly, you can wrap up with a 30 seconds comment regarding the resolution.
I am very happy, having lived on this island for so long and seeing what Dr. Chabert has done for this resolution. And I really want to thank the legislature for voting on it.
Thank you so kindly, Dr. Angelo Galabert. You are recognized for your 30 seconds.
Thank you. I've been working in the government for about 40 years, and I'm concerned about my retirement. So it's the efforts of Dr. Chabert in bringing 15,000 baby Crucians onto St. Croix that are going to maybe allow us to retire with some decent income so that we don't have to look for a second and third job. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for that commentary. I believe that's all of our hope. I do. Nurse Eberson Flood, you are recognized for your 30 seconds wrap-up comments.
Good afternoon, and thank you. I just want to say thank you to the bill sponsors, Senator James, Senator Gittins, Senate President Francis. But I also want to commend you for a resolution that, as we speak about history, the resolution has the historical facts. When a student is asked to research on Dr. Ralph D. Chabert, that resolution in the number of whereas has the history and information, and not just a resolution honoring, but telling you about the information. And so you've played your role and done your part and generated that data in this resolution. And I want to commend you on a well-written resolution with facts that puts and safeguards and ensures that it is written in the annals of our history, in the legislative record. So thank you for that.
And thank you, Nurse Eberson Flood, because that's something that I'm keenly aware of to assure that we have that level of accuracy in the records that we provide, because, you know, the future generations, even current people, are coming to research. Dr. Cora Christian, you
Yes,
are
I would like,
recognized for your 30 seconds wrap up.
Cora Christian, I would like to say that I believe that all the hard times that Dr. Dishabert went through with his mission in life, giving others hope to become the kinds of people that they should be, that his purpose was not only to survive and thrive, but to be a positive example and encourage all of us to be inspired to never give up.
Wonderful, wonderful. And thank you. And last but not least, Ms. Dishabert, Danielle, the daughter of the great man who we are honoring with this resolution today. Ms. Nurse Asford, I'm going to take your word. You asked that others sign on. My aunt Estelyn Walwyn, who who knows you as well. She said, yes, he was an exceptional doctor, and I should definitely listen to what Nurse Ashwood asks that we all sign on. But Ms. Dishabert, you are recognized for your 30-second closing remarks.
I too am grateful that this resolution has been brought forward. Senator James, Senator Francis, Senator Gittens, I appreciate it. And it's nice that's being done while he's still alive. A lot of times when we do the honoring, it's after they're gone, but it does our heart good to know that people appreciate and respect and honor and remember what you have done for the community before you go up top. I thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Thank you. I am a firm believer in giving people their flowers while they can see and their family can appreciate them and know all the good things that was said about them. So you 5 individuals are released from your testimony virtually and in person before the Committee on Government Operations, Veteran Affairs, and Consumer Protection for today. The committee will stand in recess for 2 minutes. And we are back on the record. Madam Clerk, kindly read into the record our last item today on the agenda.
Block 2, the committee will receive testimony concerning Bill number 35-0125, an act honoring and commending the late Police Lieutenant Melbourne Clark posthumously for his dedication, service, and contributions to the Virgin Islands community in law enforcement by adding the name Police Lieutenant Melbourne Clark Drive at Route 669 on the island of St. Croix. This bill is sponsored by Senator Kenneth L. Gittins. The invited testifiers are Mr. Houston Cornelius, Deputy Police Chief at the Virgin Islands Police Department, and Mr. Ray Clark. Madam Chair, this ends Mr. Ray Clark. Madam Chair, this ends the reading of today's agenda.
Thank you kindly, Madam Clerk. Who speaks on behalf of Bill number 35-0125?
Thank you. I do, Madam Chair.
Thank you so kindly. Mr. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Thank you, and good afternoon to all once again. Special good afternoon to Deputy Chief Houston Cornelius and Mr. Ray Clark with us today. I am proud to introduce Bill number 35-0125, which seeks to honor and commend the late Police Lieutenant Melbourne Clark posthumously for his dedication, service, and contributions to the Virgin Islands community in law enforcement, particularly in the Island District of St. Croix, and naming Route 669, and if I'm not correct, the good Deputy Chief will definitely correct me, from, this is again naming Route 669 from Queen Mary Highway intersection through Golden Grove to the Melvin Evans Highway on St. Croix, naming this the Police Lieutenant Melbourne Clark Memorial Drive, not just Drive. Melbourne Clark was born on the island of St. Croix in 1939 to Anna Maria James and Anthony Augustine Clark. Many of our elders will also remember him as a stellar baseball player, playing on teams in St. Croix, Puerto Rico, and even in New York. In 1960, Melbourne Clark enlisted in the United States Army and was stationed in Korea, where he continued to play baseball and received commendations for achieving top marks as an infantryman, paratrooper, and a medic. In 1972, just a year after I was born, he returned to St. Croix, where he later joined the Virgin Islands Police, where he actually joined the then Department of Public Safety, today known as the Virgin Islands Police Department. It was said that Lieutenant Melbourne Clark excelled in all his promotional exams and in his training classes. In about 1980, Lieutenant Clark graduated top of his K-9 Corps training class in Washington, D.C. He was amongst the first set of Virgin Islands police officers to become a certified K-9 Corps officer for the Virgin Islands. He was also responsible and instrumental for the selection and training of officers for the St. Thomas St. John District. Clark was recognized by then the delegate to Congress, Melvin H. Evans, in a special ceremony for his achievements. Melbourne Clark, according to his records, was promoted to lieutenant in 1985. And as you look at the screen, you'll even see Lieutenant Clark there amongst some other stellar police officers when they graduated from the K-9 Corps Academy. Melbourne Clark, according to his records, was promoted to police lieutenant in 1985 and assigned as commander of the Traffic Investigation Bureau in the Island District of St. Croix. He was known to many for his no-nonsense approach on our highways and could be seen and heard on local television and radio shows, always giving traffic updates and information. Lieutenant Clark retired from the Virgin Islands Police Department as commander of the Traffic Division, the Traffic Investigation Bureau in December 1999. In addition to his police service, Lieutenant Clark also served as a medic in the VA National Guard and was a member of the American Legion and other community organizations. He passed away on July 8th, 2012, leaving behind his 3 children, Ray Clark, Anna Maria, and Lynette Maria, as well as 3 grandchildren. His son, Ray Clark, is here today with us to provide testimony in support of his measure, this measure, along with Deputy Chief Houston Cornelius, who also served under the tutelage of Melbourne Clark. As a young law enforcement officer coming into the department, Lieutenant Melbourne Clark was one of those supervisors or commanders that everyone looked up to, well-dressed, well-mannered, knowledgeable, and paid attention to details. I was assigned to the Traffic Investigation Bureau at one point and learned a great deal from him. He took joy in sharing his knowledge and treated all officers with respect. He taught us how to do things not by telling us what to do, but also showing us what to do. And there wasn't nobody that could have done that, tell you how fast you were driving after an accident like he could have with what you call a drag sled back in the day. I guess the good deputy chief could tell us today what they use because we got so much technology now. But long ago, they used to just cut a wheel tire, put some concrete in it, and have some kind of pulley thing with a measure. Boy, I don't know how they did it, but they did it. But when it came to traffic initiative, in closing, again, he paid attention to details. He was always upfront and giving updates, as I said, in the media. And we miss these kinds of updates and community communication from the traffic division at this time. And we certainly miss Lieutenant Clark. Also signing on as sponsors to this bill today is our esteemed Senate President, Nova Lee Francis Jr., and Senator Maurice James. And I encourage anyone else to sign on to this as well. Thank you all, and I'm looking forward to a good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Gittins. With us today, we have 2 individuals who will be testifying on this bill. The first is Mr. Houston Cornelius, the Deputy Police Chief, and also Mr. Ray Clark. So we just, housekeeping matters. Before you speak, kindly put on the record your name, and then you may proceed with your answering any questions and the like. Mr. Cornelius, we're going to ask you to read your testimony into the record at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Carla J. Joseph, Chairwoman of the Committee on Government Operations, Veterans Affairs, and Consumer Protection, committee members, members of the 35th Legislature, legislative staff, fellow testifiers, and to the listening and viewing audience. I am Houston Cornelius, your Deputy Chief of Police for the Virgin Islands Police Department, St. Croix District. Honorable Carla J. Joseph, I would like to thank you for inviting me to say a few words on behalf of the good lieutenant, Lieutenant Melbourne Clark, Mel, as he was affectionately known. The community might not be aware that he was also a canine handler prior to becoming the traffic guru that he was. In 1979, then Police Commissioner Milton C. Branch and Police Chief George Washington, better known as Speedy George, authorized and designated Sergeant Peter W. Anderson to research the use of dogs in police work in the U.S. Virgin Islands. In December of 1979, the first nucleus of the K9 Corps was formed, and it consisted of 5 members. And Lieutenant Melbourne Clark was one of those proud members. Lieutenant Melbourne Clark was fortunate to travel with his K9 partner, Bear, where he assisted in solving crimes on the nearby islands. Eventually, Lieutenant Melbourne Clark was inspired by police officer J. Graham, known to most as Drummer Boy, and he took an interest in traffic and became the traffic commander, and that's where he was known to most of us. When I joined the Virgin Islands Police Department in the 1990s, he was a traffic commander, and he was feared by all because of his no-nonsense style, which most officers avoided. Lieutenant Melbourne Clark's training in traffic investigation was very extensive, and it ranged from at-scene traffic investigation, advanced traffic investigation, radar operation and detection, speed and crush depth analysis, to include accident reconstruction. Lieutenant Melbourne Clark was referred to as the route man. There was no road on the island of St. Croix that Lieutenant Melbourne Clark did not know the route number for. In an effort to educate, Lieutenant Melbourne Clark would be seen often on Channel 8 giving safety tips. To make sure the education did not miss anyone, he would also be heard on Saturdays in the afternoon on AM 970 with Gerard Los James. This is where he answered questions pertaining to Title 20, rules and regulations. And it ranged from DUI, passing on yellow lines, seatbelt usage, speeding, unregistered vehicle, etc. In the 1990s, the Virgin Islands of the United States hosted its first 70.3 half Ironman triathlon, and Lieutenant Melbourne Clark was tagged as the go-to person to lead this event. Hot Corner was the area that the onlookers would flock to see the lead car with the #1 biker on the tail of the bumper, as Lieutenant Clark made that tough maneuver. I am proud to say I was fortunate to be his sidekick, as he showed me how experienced people did it. I appreciated his leadership, loved the way he carried himself. His hat was always on his head, shoes was shine, clothes was always neat and tucked tight. When it came to eating, Lieutenant Melbourne Clark loved his seafood. However, he also loved sauce. When he came to the office with his sauce, he had a habit of carefully tucking his napkin around his neck in case of any splatter. I would always harass him and ask him, "Lut, what you dealing with, man? Rasta man don't eat them thing." And he would just chuckle. If you only know, boy. And he would continue his lunch. Lieutenant Melbourne Clark retired in December of 1999, serving 25 years to this community. And whenever we ran into each other, we would always reminisce about the old days. Even after Lieutenant Melbourne Clark retired, he could not keep still and had to find something to do. So he became a legionnaire and was district commander for Post 85 until his untimely demise. When we laid Lieutenant Melbourne Clark to rest in the Kings Hill Cemetery, even though sad, I couldn't help but smile. Why, you might ask? It was because his resting place was close to the Queen Mary Highway, Route 70, and I saw it ironic that he was right next to where traffic passes to continue monitoring peak hour traffic I want to thank the members of the 35th Legislature for seeing it fitting to bestow this honor upon a deserving servant of this community. Many of us, and I want you to bear with me, because these are the last set of people he supervised prior to his retirement. Civilian employee Louise Arnold, Sergeant Charles Orange, Corporal Lawrence Moorhead, Corporal Enrique Santos, Police Officer Carlton Wakefield, Police Officer Jermaine Payne, Police Officer Keith Williams, Police Officer Leslie Hatchett, Police Officer Freddie Ortiz, Police Officer Gloria Singho, Police Officer Naomi Joseph, and myself. We are honored to see Route 669, a road he traveled on during his career from the Patrick Sweeney headquarters daily until his retirement, be named in his honor. I know his children, Anna M. Clark, Lynette M. Clark, and his son, Ray Anthony Clark, are proud and happy to see that their father was appreciated and now his name would live on. Thank you for this consideration for Lieutenant Melbourne Clark. Mel is truly deserving of this honor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Acting Police Chief Cornelius. Deputy Police Chief. Well, I'm gonna just speak it into existence, hopefully. Right? At this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Ray Anthony Clark. You are recognized to read into the record your testimony for today.
Thank you. My name is Ray Anthony Clark, son of Melbourne Clark. Good afternoon, the Honorable Carla J. Joseph, Chair of the Committee on Government Operations, Veteran Affairs and Consumer Protection, Vice Chair, the Honorable Giovanni James, Senior, Honorable Committee Members, Honorable Senators Kenneth L. Gittins, Samuel Carrion, Alma Francis Heilager, Ray Fonseca, and Milton E. Potter. Non-committee members, Central and Legislative staff, fellow testifier, visitors present, and members of the viewing and listening public. I am Ray Anthony Clark, the eldest child and only son of the late Lieutenant Melbourne Clark. First, on behalf of my wife, Leanne, son Ray II, and the entire Clark family, let me take this opportunity to thank the Honorable Kenneth L. Gittins for honoring Daddy in this fashion. It is certainly a befitting way to honor one of the finest police officers to serve the people of St. Croix. Daddy began and ended his career at the old Patrick Sweeney headquarters, renaming Route 669 the Police Lieutenant Melbourne Clark Memorial Drive, warms our hearts, and for this, we thank you, Senator Gittins. I will have a big smile on my face every time I traverse this road from now on. But get rid of the speed bumps. Like Daddy, I like to speed too. Some of the key takeaways from Daddy's 25-year career with the Virgin Islands Police Department are graduating at the top of his class as member of the 1st Canine Corps of the Virgin Islands, which was honored by Delegate to Congress then Melvin Evans, beginning and training the 1st Canine Corps class on St. Thomas, achieving perfect scores on all exams for rank within VIPD, among the first set of honorees for Tomorrow's People, the founder is Abdul Ali, establishing the first weekly special traffic report segment on Channel 8 News with Eustace Brown as part of the weekly newscast, and numerous awards for merit and valor. However, as a singer-musician, the biggest honor to me is Mighty Pat's song about Daddy, fitly named Officer Clark. You know this song. They say, my name is Officer Clark, me bad like Pitbull, and me don't eat Duba. That's how this song went. Daddy served with distinction and left a legacy that has lived on through the passage of time. Friends and people from all walks of life constantly remind me of Daddy's exploits. As an officer and, of course, a plethora of traffic tickets he issued, Truth be told, our mother, the late Janet Joyce Amaro Clark, was a victim of Daddy's no-nonsense work ethic. One morning on her way to work, yes, she was speeding, heard the siren, and pulled over. Lo and behold, it was none other than her husband, Melbourne Clark. Daddy, in a very professional manner, exited the patrol car, requested the necessary items, and served Mommy with a speeding ticket. And when asked why he gave his wife a ticket, Daddy replied, if it were my mother speeding, I would give her a ticket. There's not a day that goes by I don't miss Daddy. Sorry, Kenny. I miss his daily calls, his advice, his chastisement, which I must add was well-deserved, and his overall aura. St. Croix just don't feel the same without him. Yet every time I speak, look in the mirror, or just call out to my son, I can see and feel him in me. I'd also like to thank a few officers who made Daddy's career with the VIPD a fruitful and meaningful one. Adelbert Bryan, who actually trained Daddy when he first came into the police department. Deputy Chief Ustan Cornelius, who I call my brother, even though we don't have the same mother and father, but Daddy treated him like he was his son. Every time we used to get in problem, Daddy would send he for me. Anita Christian, Betty Wilson, Joseph Drummer Boy Graham, Herman Hendricks, Magnus Lovegren, Roosevelt Wakefield, Larry Oliver, James Reimer Sr., Libertad Velasquez, Anton Christian, James Jugis Paris, Franz Buffy Christian, and many more too numerous to mention. Thank you. Thank God for blessing me with my father, Melbourne Clark, a man I continue to emulate, but whose shoes I could never fill. Thank you and have a blessed afternoon.
And thank you so kindly, Mr. Clark, for those moving words and a really great picture you painted of your father. Colleagues, we are going to go to one round of 3 minutes. I will now recognize Senator Ray Fonseca in the legislative chambers in St. Thomas for your 3 minutes. Senator Fonseca, kindly proceed. Kindly recognize Senator Fonseca's mic. We are not hearing him in the legislative conference room here in St. Croix. Try again, Senator Fonseca.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Hearing you clear.
I am definitely, yes, Madam Chair, I am definitely in support of Bill number 35-0125. You know, it's particularly fitting that we honor this great police officer. Reviewing the testimony received here today from Deputy Chief of Police Uson Cornelius, and also from his son Ray Clark, it's very clear that the deputy, the ticket cop, was a very professional policeman. In fact, I have to commend him for the 25 years of service to the community as a police officer. And then, of course, he went on to become the district chair for the Legionnaire. So that is very fitting. I would like to point out, though, that I don't know if I could have do the ticket with the wife, but, you know, I don't have no wife, so I guess it wouldn't apply to me. But that's very, very, very commendable. The deputy chief said that he was a no-nonsense police officer. But, you know, even though I haven't met him, I bet he still had a good relation with the public. So I would like to ask you, Deputy Chief of Police, Mr. Cornelius, can you give us some examples of how Mr. Clark dealt with the public. I know that he did a lot of tickets, so he must have been very popular or unpopular.
Yes, Senator. Lieutenant Clark, when it came to him doing enforcement and keeping this community safe, the community knew it was for their, even though they might have to spend some money, they knew eventually it was for the betterment of the community. That's what they knew. They knew he was a man that going to do enforcement. He was out there to do the people's business. He did it, and the people respected him for that, even though they might have to spend some money.
Thank you. You know, and
30
Ray,
seconds.
I can understand your emotions because, you know, every time I look in the mirror too, I see my father. So I think we both, you know, copy something off of Pops. But tell me, how was your father at home? How was him when he took that uniform off and he now became Mr. Clark around the family?
Yeah, well, Daddy, having served in the military, home was no nonsense. And I'll just give a quick example. When my father used to come home from work for K9, my job was to don't have the kennel clean and don't ready to feed the dog. When he reached, I taking the dog out of the van, wash the dog, dry the dog, put the dog in the kennel and put the food. By the time I come in there, his boots on the porch waiting on me to shine. While I there shining the boots, my sister, Anna Clark, she there in there, pointing all the different things them off for the one shot onto the next shot. And then he actually checking to see if he ain't looking at the homework to read and see if you add 1 + 1, but he just checking to see if you do it. And that was it. That was just an example of how he was. Strict and no nonsense. And I feel proud. I got a lot of beating growing up too for not following rules and regulation, and I guess that's why I'm how I am today, you know.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And at the appropriate time, I'm definitely supporting this bill. Blessings.
And thank you so kindly, Senator Fonseca. Senator Maurice James, you were here real early, and so you are recognized for your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Virgin Islands. Good afternoon to the testifiers and my colleagues. And you know what's interesting is I remember when I got my driver's license, I was always on my mind, I do not want to be stopped by that Lieutenant Clark. It's like, make sure. But you know what's interesting about that? In a small community, he was still able to enforce the law with people understanding that it was his duty to do so. And you don't see that often. You see people shying away from enforcing the law because they don't want to upset their friendship. So to give the example of giving your wife a ticket shows that this person is like, the rule of law is important. Law and order is important. I know Ray from way back when he came to me when I was running the first time. And of course, you know, when I see you, I agree with you. I see your father. That's a definite, you know. And I also see who he made in you. And just the example you give now tells me, you know, that he was a man who followed rules, who understood how important. I wanted to ask the deputy chief. I want to say to you too that so you definitely take after your daughter, because your speech is just almost as good as hers. Your testimony, almost as good as hers. He take after her.
I don't mind.
You don't mind. I know you wouldn't. I know you wouldn't. Do you think that who he is, you know, we're honoring him today, but I'm just wondering if in the police department, the young ones coming up understand the role models that came before. Because, you know, today, this community, for me anyway, I'm remembering a community of men who were examples in what they did. So I'm just wondering now, as the young police officers come up,
30
do they see
seconds.
people like him as role models for them to emulate?
Senator, I would say yes. What we are trying to do right now is trying to relay the history of the department. That's what we are trying to do right now. So we have a showcase within the Virgin Islands Police Department where you could go and see certain pictures of people that was here serving.
Yeah.
So you could look and you could see, okay, this was Lieutenant Clark, this was Officer so-and-so. So you
Time.
start to get that respect for that person that was there prior to you and learn to respect what they have done.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to do. Show the history so that that respect could now be given to that person and you now could want to strive to be like that person.
Yeah, well said, well said. Madam Chair, I know my time is up, but I want to just tell Ray that
You may wrap up.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you that you should be proud, and I understand your emotions. I totally understand it, and that's a good thing. And it's good when a son can sit and talk about how he misses his dad. And not too many, we don't see that often. And so I hope people out there see and feel how you feel, if nothing else, that how important a father is in a son's life. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so kindly, Senator James. The chair will now recognize Senator Samuel Carrion for your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to say good afternoon to the testifiers. You know, I always enjoy resolutions. I know that sometimes there's in the community, there tends to be a negative connotation to resolutions, but I think it's important that we recognize our own. If we don't do it, who will do it? And something that the Bible says that I think it's very important: give honor to who honor deserves. And here before us, we have a resolution that speaks of a man who deserves honor, a man who served this community for 25 years. I don't know if I had the opportunity to have met him. I might try to obey the traffic laws, or maybe not. But it clearly is a testament of his dedication, his integrity, and dedication to our community, but also to the police department. And I thank you, Mr. Ray Clark, for sharing your testimony and the way that you did, speaking about your father and what he meant to you, but what also he meant to this community. And as children or sons and daughters of individuals who are in the public service, sometimes we don't acknowledge the sacrifice that the family makes, especially if that individual is in the police force. Because they walk out and you don't know if they'll be back. So I want to extend to you and your family gratitude for, you know, lending your father to the community in his service. And I'm glad, and I commend the sponsor of this bill, that his work will not be in vain and his memory will continue to live on. As we drive that route, we will remember who he was and the service he provided to this community. Is it Assistant Deputy?
Deputy Chief.
Deputy Chief, I'm sorry, Deputy Chief. Can you share with us a memorable moment, something that you remember that brings you joy about who he was to you? Apart from the South.
A memorable moment. I remember one time we stopped a vehicle, and you wouldn't watch Lieutenant Clark and believe he was fluent in Spanish. So he stopped the vehicle, and when he stopped the
30
vehicle,
seconds.
here it is. You have two individuals in the car that was stopped. And I guess he was trying to tell the man, the individual, we're going to just say, we don't talk Spanish, and this is what happened. And Lieutenant Clark listened to him or the individuals. And when Lieutenant Clark started to say, dame tu licencia y tu papel para tu carro, and he went on and on with the Spanish, the guy just like, that was something that I remembered and made me smile. The fact that he knew Spanish, he listened to them, let them play their game, and he was able to respond to them in Spanish. That was a memorable moment to me. As simple as he spoke Spanish, and he was very fluent in it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That's a good one. Thank you for sharing that with us. And the benefit of knowing two languages, okay? So that's a good point now in Hispanic Heritage Month to encourage everyone to develop and learn another language. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Senator Carrion, for that very appropriate question. I'll now like to recognize Senator Potter in the legislative chambers for his 3 minutes. Senator Potter, you're recognized. Hold Senator Potter's time, Madam Clerk. We can't hear Senator Potter in the legislative chambers.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now and see you clearly as well. Kindly proceed.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I definitely rise in support of Bill number 35-0125, honoring and commending the late Police Lieutenant Melbourne Clark posthumously. I really enjoyed the testimony of both testifiers here today, the Deputy Chief Cornelius, as well as Lieutenant Clark's son, Mr. Ray Clark. I gained some great insight into the character of Lieutenant Melbourne Clark, who I have never met before. But I have always stressed the importance of us honoring and commending those among us who achieve excellence in their respective field. And without question, Lieutenant Melbourne Clark achieved greatness in his role as a member of the police department with a particular focus on traffic, in the traffic area. He was a commander of the traffic division for some time. And by all accounts, he was a very hardworking and industrious individual. Assistant or Deputy Chief Cornelius mentioned that, clearly there are two things that he has in common with the bill's sponsor. Both were career police officers and both were lovers of sauce, for sure. So that is something tremendous. I wanted to ask his son, Mr. Ray Clark, as well as the Deputy Chief, if you can share with us the greatest piece of advice that you've received from Lieutenant Melbourne Clark.
Good afternoon, Ray Clark. Unlike my father, I tend to talk too much, and I don't wear my emotions on my sleeve, way more than that he did. You know why he coming right off the bat. My father, he usually got like this expressionless look on his face, and then he don't come forward. So I would say the best advice he told me is, Ray, think about what you want to say before say it. That's the best advice I could do. He always told me that, Ray, think about what you want to say before say it. I used to really do, but I more do now I get older.
That's great advice. It saves you a lot of headache down the line, for sure. For sure. Chief Cornelius?
Yes, sir.
30
Houston
seconds.
Cornelius, St. Croix District Deputy Chief. When it came to handling the people's business, one thing he always said is make sure you do your best to represent this community. That was one advice he gave to me. And I try my best right up to this day to do that.
Excellent.
Time.
Excellent. Madam Chair, I am
You may
very
wrap
much
up,
appreciative
Senator
of
Potter.
this
You may wrap up if you
initiative.
have one lingering question.
No, I'm just wrapping it up. At the appropriate time, I will vote in the affirmative for both measures. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so kindly, Senator Potter. Senator Francis Heiliger, you are recognized for your 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to my colleagues, to the people of the territory, once again, to the testifiers. I listened here with a very warm heart to the testifiers sharing their stories of Officer Clark. The first thing I want to talk to is Officer Cornelius. You spoke a little bit about being his sidekick. Was there anything about his personality or his characteristics that rubbed off on you in a positive way?
Seriousness. I try to take things serious.
Good. I also, when you spoke a little bit about him, people had to be fearful of him. According to your testimony, you said he was feared by all because of his no nonsense style. But, to hear you testify, but then you're hearing, his son spoke about how he was as a dad, but then also had another side to him. Explain to us a little bit what you took from that when you spoke about he was feared by all because of his no nonsense style.
For me, when it came to, okay, in police work, when you come to handle your cases, get them in, no excuses, you have to go out there to deal with peak hour traffic. It was constantly on the go. So it had it have individuals that would come here and they're not really about that. But when you come and you have to deal with Lieutenant Clark, that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's about handling your reports, dealing with your tickets, being out there in peak hour traffic. It has no time for excuses. Get it done. And for me, that was the no-nonsense way about him, and that's what caused people to be fearful of him, his style. Business. No excuse.
I agree. And I think, even with that type of personality, if we had a lot more of that, or we continue to see a lot more of that, even in our government, we probably might be a lot more progressive and further along. So, I think as a people, we might have had a little bit fear because of the no nonsense, but the effectiveness of that type of personality at times did wonders. So I think it was a good thing. To Ray Clark, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Senator?
Good. You almost had me in tears here because when you started to talk about your dad, I started to think about mine. So I fully understand that bond, what it is, because I'm firstborn and I'm a daddy's girl. I always have been. So it got so bad, like my mom would be like, I know you love your father. Like, okay. I wouldn't even get an argument with her. It just was what it was. But
30
I
seconds.
understand how you're feeling. And what I want to ask you is if you had an opportunity to just talk to your dad right now, with all the things that he taught you, all the things that he showed you, the emotions that you are feeling because of him being a part of your life, what exactly would you like to say, or would you say to your dad if you had an opportunity to do so right now?
Time.
Did you want to comment?
I think he just wants a little bit of time.
Yeah, Ray Clark. That I love him. That's basically it. I was there tooth and nail with him when he got sick up until when he died. Was able to find out so much about my father I didn't even know. Personally, about him growing up and stuff like that. And my woman is one of them old time, and I'm sure Senator Gittins and President Francis could attest to that. Them old-time fathers and things, you know love through what they do. Ain't all the time they're going to tell you they love you like that, you know?
Yes.
But while he was still lucid, before he really got sick and went to the hospice, he had a time he just watched me, tell me, he said, you know, Ray, I really love you. I couldn't even answer. I couldn't even answer. So, really, that's what I would tell you, you know? Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I would tell him.
thank you so much for, just letting us in and sharing that with us today. Madam Chair, I definitely appreciate the additional time, but I definitely will be voting in the affirmative for this piece of legislation. It's a beautiful thing that when we as a people do our best to recognize the people that help build these islands into what it is today. And every time we pass a resolution, we are literally crafting a page in our history books. As the individual working with my other colleague to make sure that history is an integral part of our children's education, it is so important when people turn to us and say things like, we don't have enough history, we don't have enough documentation. Listen, you could take all the resolutions written and put out by the legislature, and you could make books upon books about the people of this territory. So don't let anybody ever say we don't have a history. We have to make sure our children are educated and know about all of these wonderful people that are Virgin Islanders through and through. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you so kindly, Senator Francis Heiliger. Now recognize Mr. President Novell E. Francis Jr. for your 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to all, Deputy Chief Cornelius, and certainly Mr. Ray Clark. And today, I think both of these resolutions evoke all of the emotions out of me, because these are individuals that I've certainly had the opportunity to watch and grow over a number of years. As you know, I spent 25 years in the Virgin Islands Police Department, and I spent my entire high school years going to career, from school to career with the Virgin Islands Police Department. So I had the opportunity certainly to engage and watch and Lieutenant Melbourne Clark for a long, long time. So I'm definitely in support of the Police Lieutenant Melbourne Clark Memorial Drive, but speed bumps was put on the road because of people like Melbourne Clark.
It was.
He used to speed through there, and that's the reason why we have speed bumps on the Golden Grove Road. But when you talk about an individual that really paid his dues and was serious-minded, certainly with the K9 back there with beer, he did his part. But to move from there to traffic, and when Deputy Chief Cornelius talked about that he was feared by everyone, this guy will hang out with you under the treetop in Christiansted Town, and then on the way home, boss you a ticket. So he's not only giving his wife a ticket, he'll give his friends, his drinking buddies a ticket. But even more so, if he investigate a traffic accident that involved a police officer, and they were found to be wrong, they were issued a citation. He was really serious-minded about his role. So I had the opportunity certainly to grow within him to the point where I became the Deputy Chief of Police, and a lot of time relied on him to put together traffic operation plans for a number of events. He was known as Mr. Triathlon. And when you talk about leaving a level of succession and planning his departure from the Virgin Islands Police Department, he did that through Cornelius. Unit 40 passed on that information to Unit 45. So when he transitioned and retired, we knew that we had somebody that could have assumed that responsibility to handle those triathlons because you take it for granted. But you had to move in lockstep with those bikers. You had to move. You have helicopter that follow over in the air, and you on the ground. And Melbourne Clark was responsible for moving, that speed to get that individual in a timely fashion. So really quickly before I conclude, I want to say that he was a traffic reconstructionist, and I heard my colleague made mention about the tire, which is the drag sled, but really what that did was the coefficient of friction. They were able to mathematically gauge the rubber with the concrete and a scale to determine the point of impact and the amount of speed that you were traveling at a traffic accident, and that was old school. I'm sure we have moved from that. But whenever you heard about 1144 accident major, you know that Lieutenant Clark was coming on that scene along with, and he didn't keep all of this information for himself. He passed it on. He passed it on to those individuals that worked with him. Cornelius, you heard about Singho, you heard about Kike Santos and all these individuals that could have done it equally as well because he passed on that expertise to them. But just to wrap up, when you talk about the route numbers, he knew the route numbers throughout this entire territory and was able to train Cornelius in that as well. But he knew the route numbers of all of the intersections and the roads and gave that information to Central Dispatch a lot of time, and they have to go on the board and the map to actually determine exactly where he may have been at that given time. But he knew exactly all of the route numbers throughout this territory and was called by Public Works a lot of time to regurgitate what those route numbers were. So again, I want to commend the bill sponsor for this piece of legislation, and I definitely stand in support of it. But don't drink with Lieutenant Clark. You will get a ticket afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senate President Francis, for your comments. And you can start my time. I stand in full support of Bill number 35-0125. And to my colleague in the minority, she made a great point about history. Yeah, the history is there, it's on the books, but it's about taking action. And that is why I'm calling upon the Board of Education, the Department of Education, to put their bright minds together and to put that history into something where our students can be able to read it. And if not a book right now, at least during Virgin Islands History Month. The other day somebody will come in with Governor's Day, but trust me, to be a good governor, you have to have a good society, a good community. You need doctors, lawyers, judges, senators, plumbers, electricians, and the list goes on. A governor is nobody without these people in the community. So no governors there until we recognize our own. However, you said that your father gave you advice, Mr. Ray Clark. What was the advice?
Think before you speak.
So I want you to think before you answer this question. Who has the best sauce? Gittins or or your dad?
Jokingly, but I would answer the question. I know, not bragging, but my aunt Adina on my mother's side had the best sauce on the island for years. Adina Vantapool. Adina's bar in Christian said on Queen Cross Street. But when he can't get sauce there, he used to go by Paquitos to get sauce. That I know for sure. Oh, for that lady down in Campo Rico. I forget her name now.
So he never got any from the sponsor of the measure?
No.
Oh,
No.
But in all seriousness, because I saw you were, feeling a little low a while ago, but I'm happy that I was able to get you to laugh and to reminisce on your pops. But now I understand why your father was so structured. He was in the military. And we can't ignore the fact that he was in the military and not taken away from any other police officer who never served. But one thing I know, once you go through boot camp and you went through those rigorous training and what have you, it instills certain principles and values in you.
30
So,
seconds.
To be somebody, you have to walk the same route as them. So that's how come it's hard to replace certain individuals in this community. But as far as your dad, of course, I don't know him. I was still a child. But just from reading the testimony and hearing the remarks from my colleagues, I can only imagine how he was. Because growing up, I don't know if I can compare your dad to who I know, but at the time, we were afraid by Patrolo growing up. When I was a child, when you see Patrolo coming, you're running for the hills. You know, Patrolo never used to play with us. But I can only imagine us listening to the stories, how your father was. And I saw something here. I saw he was a traveling man, so that's a great thing. So to your family, once again, I hope with the renaming or the naming of this road that at least a part of VI history will now be with your family forever. And to the people driving on the road, please don't speed. I don't even like traveling on the road. And I'm happy to know that Public Works is fixing that section right there. So that's a great thing. So by the time we name the road, it's going to be in great condition. So great timing to the sponsor of the measure. We are going to go to the sponsor of the measure, who will now place his remarks on the record. Senator Giddens, you're recognized. Senator Giddens, you're now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me start from back, go forward. So, just to let you know, Mr. Chair, the first boot camp is in your mother house, your parents. The second boot camp will be the military. So I am pretty sure that Lieutenant Melbourne Clark was structured from his parents who are mentioned in the resolution. And our colleague from St. Thomas also made another good point regarding the utilizing this type of information in the resolution to be used for Virgin Islands history. And I say to my colleagues, that's why it's key for us to make sure that we review these resolutions and make sure that accurate information is in there if we're going to use it for these historical purposes. Now, you know, I want to thank you both for your testimony. And on the onset, let me apologize to your sister, Anna Clark, that I didn't notify her before of the hearing. I thought that was being communicated through the chair, but nevertheless, I will take the fall for that. But I was looking through my messages, and I saw a communication with her, and when I reached out to both you and her to let you all know that the resolution is on blue, and we're looking to move forward. And both of you were so excited, and she asked me, what's the route number again that you're going to be naming this road? And I said, oh boy, don't do me that. I really can't recall, although I was just inside the Department of Public Works yesterday and having this discussion. And her response to me was, LOL, you're not Lieutenant Clark, so I don't expect you to know, LOL. And, you know, it just made me smile when she said that, because only two people in the department for real I used to hear using route number. Lieutenant Melbourne Clark and this young rookie whippersnapper when he came on, Houston Cornelius. You know, and I'm like, you know what, one of these days, I couldn't tell this to Lieutenant Clark because what he was doing was actually, and I beg your indulgence ahead of time, what Lieutenant Clark was doing was actually training individuals to know what their route numbers were. And it used to kind of peeve me a little bit because I didn't know all the route numbers. Cornelius came after me, came into traffic and whatnot, but every time he get on the radio, he's like, Central traveling to that, I don't want to call the code name, but on route so-and-so, junction so-and-so. And every time I would meet with him face to face, I said, officer, you're going to continue to keep saying on the radio, you're going to route this and junction this and that until you're getting your behind kick one day and somebody need to come and back you up and we ain't going to know where to come. I bet you at that time you're going to say you're the Melvin Evans Highway vicinity of Paradise. You know, so at least if you're going to say the route number, the junction number, say what vicinity as well with the name of the estate. So we always had that that back and forth. But I wanted to also let you all know that, man, Mr. Clark, when you spoke about the song Officer Clark, I'm like, you like throw me in the back seat. I'm like, wow, this song for real. If I had only known, I would have probably tried to get it, right? So when you see me walked off the floor, what I did was I went to try to get some information, and I did get to speak with Mr. Samuel Forden, and you know who that is? A.K.A. Mighty Pat. So I said, Mighty Pat, man, tell me what's the words for this song again? I ain't going to sing it, but I'm going to tell you, he said that the words was, me say my name is Officer Clark. Me a one officer, me don't skylark. Then the next thing was, repeat it again, me say my name is Officer Clark. Bad like pit bull, eat you like a white shark. Yeah, like a white shark. Then he said the last part was, me say my name is Officer Clark. Me spark in the dark, me have eyes like a hawk. So, and he said that this song actually came out in the 70s. I thought it was the 90s, but he said no, it was in the 70s because he left here in 1980 before he returned to St. Croix. So he know that he did the song in the 70s. And he could not get me a copy of the song. Why not? Because back then, it was just cassettes. So it's not on CD. So we can't get it. So I'm asking him, he gonna have to sing this song again. So Daddy Jones in the booth back there, please get with him so we could get this done. And in closing, Deputy Chief Cornelius, you know, you said a lot about Lieutenant Clark, and that's my passion, to see the Virgin Islands Police Department in that line, lockstep, like the former commissioner used, lockstep, because we know what that blue book called for. And every officer that goes through the police academy has one of those. And if we lockstep, we will be able to have a lot more Lieutenant Clarks out there that not only love his job, love his community, but love the service that they provide to this community. In the way he dresses and carried himself. His dress attire commanded and demanded that respect, and that's the same thing that we're looking for. So the where you talk about the at-scene traffic investigation.
I'm so sorry,
I'm closing up right now.
Yes, and Senator Gittins, with all due respect, I did give you an additional 3 minutes. So if we could close up. Thank you so much. I really want to be sure that we all are respectful, as I'm sure Lieutenant Clark was of the time. And also, I didn't have an opportunity to speak on it. I had Senator Javon E. James Sr. in my seat as a chair, but I wanted to note that I had an occasion to run into Lieutenant Clark when, when I was, it would have been 1989. I was on the Melvin H. Evans Highway, and I was shut in, meaning I was driving fast, heading into Frederickstead. And he pulled me over. And when he pulled me over, I had a whole bunch of young people in the back of my car. We were going to this Seventh-day Adventist church. I was shouting because we were almost late. And they were like, oh, Auntie, he pulled you over because you look too young to be driving. And he did pull me over. And I was like, wow, this is so great. And because I had just gotten my driver's license from in St. Thomas. And he pulled me over and he said, "License and registration, please." And I pulled out my brand new driver's license to show him with pride. And he said, "Okay, why are you driving so fast?" I told him, "I'm heading to church. We're a little late. I don't want to be too late." And he said, "Okay, go ahead, but drive carefully." I remember that day vividly. And, one of the things that you mentioned, Mr. Clark, is that your father was a disciplinarian. And yesterday was the murder victim's observation. We observed it. How can you say, especially you, also deputy police chief, that level of discipline? Now, some persons think about discipline as a corporal punishment, but there is another discipline in there where you are putting a structure in your home. What structure in your home, Mr. Clark, did your father impart to assure that you and your siblings walk that straight road?
Well, I feel that structure was co-parented between him and my mother. They were the law, they were the jury, they were the executioner. So you ain't, none of us, we know that if we didn't, and I'm not gonna sit there and lie, I got in a lot of trouble growing up, a lot, too much. But there were always consequences, and I'm not one of those people where I feel you should spare the rod and this corporal punishment nonsense, and I don't agree with that. I feel if you got poor beaten, and you got poor beaten, because to me, thank you, spare the rod, spoil the chair. The licks will definitely put him in line, and keep that order. I couldn't listen. Just in short, my father and mother had to know everywhere I went, every place. So when I was going to the 11th grade prom, my date, I picked my date up and everything. My date didn't know my mother and father were in the car behind me. Escort me to the house to pick she up, escort me from her house to the venue. Then when the time coming for it done, I tell she, listen, I'm going to use the restroom. I said, I'm going to use her phone to call him and say, well, by me, daddy, the prom almost done, I could come now. And they follow me up. That's just how he was, you know what I mean? He mean that I ain't speeding, I ain't doing no nonsense, I ain't going nowhere else but the prom, and how, that's just how he was. So I feel it's more that structure, more that seriousness. You got a lot of parents who don't do it today, yes? I got a lot, but it still have some that just don't do it, and it needs to be done.
And you, are a parent yourself, have utilized those good disciplinary and parenting skills, I trust and hope, with your children.
Oh boy, well, my son, yeah, of course. And on that note, I just want to say something. I know the bill already passed, but
it hasn't yet. We didn't vote on it. No,
not this bill. I'm talking about the bill for Dr. Ralph D. Chabert.
Yes.
If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have a son. I just want to put that on the record. He's the one that brought my son into the world. If it wasn't for him, the problems with my wife, I wouldn't even be discovered, you know? So kudos to him for that. I wish I had known that bill was before this. I could have told I wanted to testify briefly, you know, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have a son. So I really got put up. But yeah, the same way my father brought me up is the same way I brought up my son. So that's why people, when I go away any place, even though my son has a slight disability, my son, when he walk in, hi, good afternoon, you know, he has manners, everything. You know what I mean? Very good demeanor, everything. He ain't unruly and will carry on upset. And no, he ain't like that.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Clark, for that testimony. Colleagues, we have exhausted all of our time on this bill. I will give the opportunity for the testifiers to present a 30-second closeout on the matter, beginning with you, Deputy Police Officer Cornelius. You are recognized for your 30 seconds closing remarks.
Honorable Carla J. Joseph, I would just like to say thank you to yourself and the committee for considering, again, the Honorable Lieutenant Melbourne Clark for this resolution. I really appreciate it. Along, I know with the members of the Virgin Islands Police Department, it is something deserving to this servant for 25 years. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Ray Clark. You are recognized for your 30 seconds wrap up.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank Senator Kenneth Gittins for bringing forward the measure. It's something that he told me about a while ago. And he told me when the time is right, he's going to bring it forward. So I know the time is right. We would like to thank you for bringing it forward today. I'd like to thank all of you for actually supporting it. That he wasn't a man big on accolades, you know. He wasn't a man like to be, you know, told, oh, he did a good job and all that. He just know he did a good job, and once he know he did his work and he did everything to 150%, he was satisfied. So, but I know he'd be smiling today.
Oh, yes.
And I know he is smiling. Well, you know, we there, and I just thank y'all so much. Thank y'all so much, you know. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Clark. Do I hear a motion? Senator Kenneth L. Gittins, you are recognized for your motion.
Madam Chair and colleagues, I move that Bill number 35-0125, an act honoring and commending the late Police Lieutenant Melbourne Clark posthumously for his dedication, service, and contributions to the Virgin Islands community and law enforcement by adding the name Police Lieutenant Melbourne Clark Memorial Drive at Route 669 on the island of St. Croix. I request respectfully that this measure be voted upon favorably here in this committee and be forwarded to the Rules and Judiciary Committee for further vetting. I so move.
Second.
Bill number 35-0125 has been properly moved by Senator Kenneth L. Gittins and seconded by Senators Javon James Sr. and Alma Francis Heiliger. Roll call on Bill number 35-0125.
Senator Samuel Carrion. Senator Carrion, yea. Senator Ray Fonseca.
Yay.
Senator Fonseca, yea. Senator Alma Francis Heiliger.
Yes.
Senator Francis Heiliger, yea. Senator Kenneth L. Gittins. Senator Gittins, yea. Senator Javon E. James Sr. Senator James Sr., yea. Senator Carla J. Joseph.
Yes.
Senator Joseph, yea. Senator Milton E. Potter.
Yes.
Senator Potter, yea. Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Bill number 35-025, an act honoring and commending the late Police Lieutenant Melbourne Clark posthumously for his dedication, service, and contributions to the Virgin Islands community in law enforcement by adding the name Police Lieutenant Melbourne Clark Drive at Route 669 on the island of St. Croix has been favorably voted upon in this committee and will be forwarded to the Committee on Rules and Judiciary for further action and consideration. I want to take this opportunity as we bring this proceeding to a close to all of my members of the Committee on Government Operations. I also want to thank the testifiers who are here with us and to release you from your testimony before the Committee on Government Operations, Veterans Affairs, and Consumer Protection. I would also like to thank the non-members of this committee for carving out time today to be here and to ask questions as well as to testify themselves on their interactions with the resolutions of the persons who were vetted today. I want to give my staff a big kudos for being here with me and getting everything set up. I also want to thank the central staff, especially our media, for all they have done. We initially wanted to have this meeting beginning at 10 o'clock, but due to circumstances surrounding the bill that we had initially on the agenda and some of the testifiers not being available to testify, the proponent of the measure requested respectfully that we withdraw the bill from the agenda today, and so that's why we had a later start. But we wanted to definitely not delay further these two resolutions honoring some of the Crucian grown and very own persons here today. So with that saying, the Committee on Government Operations, Veterans Affairs, and Consumer Protection meeting for today, September 26, 2023, is hereby adjourned.